Hello everyone. Thank you for joining. Let me know if there are any audio issues. I always worry about that when I start talking. Can people actually hear me? Um, trigger warning, trigger warning. I am going to be triggering people today, and you are hereby warned. I have been triggering people all morning. I don't know what is up with all of the animosity on social media. Man, it is rough. Yasu Adoni. Yase Olus, hello everyone. Hierete Pandes. Okay, good, loud and clear. So, yeah, just a reminder of the short plug, crossbible.com. Start reading the Bible. Make sure you are subscribed for free. It is free to register on a permanent free tier, but then we are rolling out new features. Next week, I'm going to be presented with a demo by my really dedicated team of talented web developers for the new highlights feature, for the new lexicon integration. We're integrating Thayer's lexicon into CrossBible, so you're going to be able to translate words on the fly. Right now, if you subscribe for $5 a month, you can start taking notes and start leaving bookmarks, color coding, and categorizing your bookmarks. So we'll demo some of that stuff. We were going over it last week. Look, it's a little bit of a rough start. There are some things that still need to be ironed out, and I appreciate everybody who is on Discord who's flagging these difficulties and making bug reports and making feature suggestions. So please jump on the Discord link that I dropped in the pinned comment in the chat. I'll pin a comment to the video itself as well. And check out our blog. This is what's been triggering people all morning. So I have these two blog posts that I created. First, the one I dropped was July 10th with the interview that I did that we've been going over with Evangelos Markadonis. Look, I spent a lot of time making sure that like the subtitles were dialed in. I dubbed this over in English so people could listen to it and read it here on the blog. But I was very careful to make sure that every time the priest recited something in ancient Greek, that the ancient Greek was put in a block quote, right? I didn't want to just translate everything he said, because when he speaks ancient Greek, there's like a purpose for him shifting in ancient Greek. I have it there in Greek, and then I have the English translation of everything that's being said. So this English blog post does not have any modern Greek in it, except for, I'm sorry, I'm going to super speed scroll down to the bottom, except for this glossary. So I did extra special, I exuded extra special effort to put together a glossary for just some basic terms that I didn't know even before going into the interview about sort of the, special kind of Orthodox terminology for various aspects of Easter, the church architecture. There are things here that were very enlightening to me that I wanted to share. My motivation in doing all of this meticulous work was primarily for my Greek students, because I know that they benefit from actually reading the original Greek text in the interview. But I got a comment today on a Facebook group where I shared these blog posts, hoping that some people find value in it. A comment that said, just to save everybody some time, just so everybody knows, this is all in modern Greek, which is true, but it said there's no koine, in any of it, which is just blatantly false. So again, for anybody who's confused, yes, this is all modern Greek. We were speaking modern Greek. That's just the translation of what we were saying. But every time he busts out some ancient Greek, it's right here. It's in this commenter who was very confused was like, well, I don't see any breathing marks. Well, here's a breathing mark for you right there. Here's a breathing mark right here. Here's a breathing mark right here. Smooth breathing marks. So all of the ancient Greek is represented here in polytonic script in block quotes. His confusion was he was searching for the quotation marks. Block quotes don't actually include they render it with a vertical line and quotation marks, but it's there's no actual quotation marks in the text. Otherwise, if I put the quotation marks there in the block quotes, it would be double quotes. And then also note that we're working on, getting better coverage on our polytonic Greek diacritical marks, the support for the browser. Right now, there are grave accents that are marked to the side of the letter and not above the letter. So that's just sort of like, it's a heavy load to send a packet of the SBL font. That's what we use in the Bible reader to support polytonic script. And it's heavy. It slows down your browser. So when we can, we try to keep those fonts off of your browser, but every once in a while it's nice to include them. So we're working on that. I think the blog posts, wherever they do have polytonic script, we need to ideally be able to support that. So make sure you watch, go back and watch our videos. Anything you haven't seen, it's all here on crossbible.com/blog. We are going to be touching on the critical text today. So this blog post from June 22nd, Codex Sinaiticus and the critical text, was the original Bible corrupted and restored? This is a video that I highly advise, if anybody hasn't seen it, even if you have seen it, go back and rewatch it, please. Just the watch hours really support us. How many subscribers are we at right now? Let me see. How many subscribers are we at on the Cross Bible YouTube page? I've been celebrating hitting 2,000 subscribers for weeks, and we're I think 60 subscribers away from hitting our 2,000 subscriber mark. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. I also have a 1 hour video on Greek versus Hebrew, a history of the biblical languages and lexicography. So please make sure you watch that as well. And Ali Rowan writes, be aware Thayer's has some limitations and outdated ideas, written in 1890 before the Herculaneum papyri could add to the pool of context for lemmas. That's true. Oh, thank you for Myth Vision Podcast. Derek's in the house. Wait, Derek's in the house, sharing to my community tab. Thank you very much, Derek. Derek just got off of a live stream with Dennis McDonald that, if you haven't seen, you should go back and watch. It's very interesting analysis of his perspective on the synoptic gospels and their relationships. Stephen, any plans on adding commentaries from the church fathers to your site? Probably not anytime soon. Smash the subscribe button, please smash the subscribe button. If you're here for the first time, welcome. This is the official Cross Bible YouTube channel, our weekly live stream. And I pushed it. Originally it was at 10 a.m., but then I pushed it because I noticed that Dennis McDonald was on, and I asked him a question about the Synoptic Gospels. Maybe we can go over that a little bit. So today I'm going to, by popular request, there were some requests last week for me to address the topic of textual criticism in the new 21st century, post-2025 world, which is really shifting. There's a shift. So I was going to mention, so if you go to the timeline of the Bible, let's see, the timeline of the Bible, add this to the stage. So the timeline of the Bible, let's see, hold on a second. Let me pull this up. Because I have a new hidden feature. It's like the hidden menu at In-N-Out Burger that only the insiders are going to know about. Okay, so let's see. Can you see that? Okay, hold on. No, let me add this to the stage. All right, I'm getting better. Oh, hello. Jonathan Sheffield is in the house. Hello, Stephen. So Jonathan Sheffield, if you are not aware, let me see. I'm going to be sharing videos from the Anglican Autodidact YouTube channel. That's the quick link to the channel, the Anglican Autodidact on YouTube. And if you're not subscribed to that channel, you are really late to the party. He also, I think, is around 2,000 subscribers. Here's a link to his YouTube channel. Make sure, my man Jonathan. So Derek and Jonathan are friends. Derek connected me with Jonathan years ago, and we've been kind of tossing around ideas to produce some animated videos, some cartoons. That's one of Jonathan's talents. And if you go to his YouTube channel, wait, hold on, I'm going to get this off and I'm going to add, I'm going to feature his, okay, let me stop the screen share. Let me show you his channel because we're going to be looking at some things from his channel. So this is Jonathan Sheffield's channel. And man, I mean, he really deserves more attention to his work than he's getting right now, just based on subscriber count. Because man, he's debated Tobias Singer, he's debated Richard Carrier, he's like, you know, had these discussions with John Collins. Like he's super, he's all over the place. Like he just covers a lot of ground. And what we're going to be going over today are some of his fun explainer educational cartoons that also deserve a lot more attention. We're going to look at the James White Halloween special, 12K views on that one. He's got these videos of Bart Ehrman, really great, entertaining, educational stuff. I can't recommend it enough. And you know, he and I may not agree on all of the you know, conclusions. Oh, sorry, I'm not even showing it. There, boom. Okay. So this is his channel. So how we got the text of the New Testament. So this is definitely complementary to the stuff that we do on Cross Bible. Jonathan just has amazing work here. You can see his discussions with Mark Goodacre. Like you could see just the debates, discussions. He's super prolific. This is like, you know, this stuff has been up for like over 5 years. His oldest videos from 8 years ago. And you can see, you can also kind of track the progression of his sort of, you know, skill in creating these animated videos. So can't recommend that enough. We're going to do a little watch party on some of this stuff. Okay, so I was going to show, hold on a second, let me stay on track. I'm going to show real quick something that you can uncover, the hidden menu. Okay. So if you're on the timeline, what I've done is I've made available rough drafts of my Hebrew language timeline, which I presented in that video that I showed you, the history of, you know, Greek and Hebrew lexicography, and then the Greek lexicography timeline, my English timeline, history of English. The presentation is not great. It's hard to read. I get it. Like there's white background. I just wanted to throw it up there and make it available to the public. I'm going to improve the look and feel of it. Obviously, the Bible timeline is the primary timeline, but you know, and it has like all of the notes. I mean, this is where I've really put in all the work. But you can also jump into the Greek timeline. And as you can see here, I have like a history of lexicography. And you know, so what the point about Thayer, so Joseph Thayer's Greek English lexicon of the New Testament, which is sort of linked with Strong's Concordance in terms of the Strong's IDs are tagged in Thayer's lexicon. So yeah, this is sort of like a post-date Strong's Concordance. Obviously, you know, it is a dated lexicon, and all lexicons have errors and omissions and things that are not informed by the latest scholarship. They're printed and they become, you know, not obsolete, but they become dated soon after they become printed because scholarship is pressing forward, and the publication date of a lexicon is sort of where it is fixed in time in terms of the timeline of our understanding of the meaning of words and everything. My strong recommendation for people who are seeking lexicons or seeking, you know, like resources and wondering, I mean, there's so many available. Obviously, LSJ is very popular, but LSJ casts a net of the meanings of words that typically fall between Homer and the classical period, a little bit into the Hellenistic period, what people call Koine. But it doesn't always really do a good job of covering. It doesn't have coverage in lexicographical terms of the meaning of words into the Hellenistic and, you know, the Koine, the Common Greek period of the, you know, the Alexandrian period. So really, if you're looking at the legacy of biblical Greek lexicons, you really should be, you know, like at the big boy table with BDAG, right? So you have Bag D, and then BDAG, Bauer, Donker, Arndt, and Gingrich lexicon. That is really, you know, the lexicon that focuses strongly on the Greek that you find in the New Testament, to some extent the Septuagint, not quite. You know, there are other lexicons that focus on the Septuagint. You can see some of these, I think, are listed here. So this is something you can explore, and you know, I'll be making improvements to it gradually. It's a little premature for me to release it, but think of it as an early release. You don't see anything. Geez, I keep forgetting. All right, so let me go back over this. All right, so the Bible timeline. If you are on the Bible timeline and you look here in the bottom left, there is a tab that says Bible Hebrew, which is the Hebrew language timeline, Greek, which is the Greek language timeline, and English, which is the English language timeline. So again, these are experimental. The Greek timeline, if you come over to the right, you're going to see the lexicons, a sort of taxonomy, a genealogy of lexicons. And you're going to see LSJ here. You're going to see the sort of lineage of LSJ, the OUP supplements that came later. You're going to see Brill. You're going to see the Cambridge lexicon. You're going to sort of get a map of the lay of the land. And the biblical Greek lexicons are in a separate group, right? So again, this is ancient Greek lexicons, right? Covering Homer to classical. And then you go down here and you see biblical Greek lexicons, right? And make sure you are registered. Right now, you can just access this like this is open to the general public. I'm probably going to lock this down for people who are in the club and are registered for free, right? Like it's still going to be free. I'm not going to charge money for access to timelines, but it's I'm probably going to make this more of a restricted thing that will be available to people who are actually signed up. So make sure. So you see in the top right corner here, sign up. Sign up here. Sorry, sign in if you're already registered. Sign up if you're not registered. And it is free. So just go and sign up, please. It really helps us to sort of get our numbers up and have people, opted into the mailing list. I'm going to hopefully be sending updates soon to the mailing list when we release the NRSV updated edition and the New English Translation, NET version 1. Those are resources that are super dense, where they have a lot behind there's a lot of XML code that we need to parse. And once that's all parsed and integrated into the platform, those Bibles are going to have footnotes that will not just be buried at the bottom of the page. You can open them up in your notes panel and read them from there. So that is, we're trying to give more value to people who want the custom Bible study features that are currently $5 a month. So if you pay $5 a month, you help support our mission. You help get more and more resources up and running because it is quite a task. And then let's see the question from Vesper: does modern Greek fully elucidate the older versions of it like Koine, or does it leave much to be desired? Cross Bible elucidate. I don't know. I don't know. Sorry, not totally following the question. But if you want to investigate it on your own, you can come into Cross Bible. And if you're familiar with ancient Greek, you can open up a new panel and select the SBL Greek New Testament, for example. And hold on a second, let me see. Sorry. I'm in Genesis, so you would have to let's see. Let's skip to the New Testament so we can actually see a comparison, because the SBL Greek New Testament is not going to show you Genesis, obviously. So Mark 1, right? We got the NIV, we got the SBL. If you're interested in comparing modern Greek, just open up a new tab, and right now we have two different options. If you scroll down to the bottom of the menu, you can't see it here. You're going to see currently two versions of modern Greek Bibles that are available. We're working on getting a third one up and running. I'll add a fourth column, and I will put the let's see, the Spiros Philos modern Greek Bible. So to illustrate the answer to this question from Vesper, again, the question is: does modern Greek fully elucidate the older versions of it like Koine? Okay, so the older versions of it, and the key is versions, right? There are lots of versions of Greek, which are in that timeline that I was just showing. And you can see here the trajectory, right? So you have English over here on the left. You have the SBL Koine, right? The original Greek, the ancient Greek version in the SBL column. Then you have Van Vass, who is basically adhering as closely as he possibly can to the original text. And what you can see here is he has like kathosine yegramenon entis prophetes, right? So in the prophets, he is translating from the Textus Receptus, right? So this is already going to be a slight mismatch, right? Like I'm comparing apples to oranges. I'm comparing the SBL critical text to a translation of the Textus Receptus, right? So we're already dealing with different text types. That's going to be a big topic of what we're going to be discussing today. But this is a version, one of the versions of modern Greek that is very, very close to the original, right? Like he's basically walking on eggshells with his translation. He's actually just paraphrasing the original. And there are Protestant churches in Greece that adhere very closely to this. This is like their go-to translation. It's like their King James, right? Whereas the Spiros Philos, modern Greek translation over here on the right, this is a much more liberal paraphrase, like a proper translation that is taking the ancient Greek and updating it to more or less standard modern Greek, like what you might hear in more colloquial language. And there are a lot of Greek people who would object to stretching it this far. Like they don't want the Bible to be in an accessible colloquial form of their language. They would prefer it to be in like more formal Greek, which is called katharevousa, which is over here in Van Vass. So I hope that helps answer the question. This is more just sort of giving you a roadmap for if you want to do your own study. You don't have to have the English up here. You could just have it be all Greek. But if you're going to be comparing apples to apples, what you're going to want is not to use the SBL. You're probably going to want to use the Stephanus. So Stephanus is one of the authors in the Textus Receptus revisions chain. And Stephanus is paradeigmeno kymeno, like the received text, the TR. This is going to align much more closely. You can see os iegrapte entis prophetes turns into kathosine iegramenon entis prophetes, right? This little modernized versus kathos ine grameno stus prophetes, right? Again, these are not radically different languages. I mean, it could be argued that, okay, this is just a different language. They're there's a lot of overlap, guys. Like I know, trigger warning, it's really disturbing to some people to hear this, but there isn't that much difference. And I've been going back and forth with people on Facebook all morning who are very confused on this topic. It's a little complex, and I'm here to make that to clarify some of that and make it easier for everyone. So let's go ahead and kick off the this reaction video for Jonathan Sheffield. I hope he's still in the chat. Really honored to have him here and to feature some of this really fun stuff. So we'll start with a James White Christmas Carol. And this is just regarding, this is a single textual variant, Luke 23:34, and Father forgive them. And we can see, you know what, let's play this at double speed. I'm not going to do the whole thing because you guys should just go watch it and make sure you like and subscribe. But this is really, really cute. And I had, okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. Glad to be here. So let's take a look at some of this because it's going to be fun. This is double speed. Oh, sorry.
Scribes, blah, humbug. Here, take these documents right over to be mailed out. We need to be honest about the corruptions in our scriptures, especially to my biggest supporters.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Happy Christmas Eve, James White.
Father, forgive them, forgive them. They don't know what they do, what they do. Father, forgive them, forgive them. Help me forgive them too.
There, I mean the link.
Forgive them too.
Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. Bah, humbug. I should have known you were behind this, Dr. David Wood. You know this is a variant reading of the New Testament and not found in our earliest and best manuscripts. Not only would I never preach on it, but I would never sing it either. And I definitely don't want to hear it being sung. Now get out of here.
Father, forgive him, for he does not know what he is doing.
Jesus never said that. I rebuke you, Dr. David Wood. Father, forgive them in Luke 23:34. Where's your evidence, Wood?
Repent. Repent, James White. James, it's me. Don't you remember? I don't have much time.
Lord, are you speaking to me?
It's me, Bruce Metzger. Repent now, James. You still have time. I have come here to warn you. On each of 3 consecutive nights, you will be visited by a ghostly spirit. He will show you the error of your ways and document the textual evidence in support of Father forgive them in Luke 23:34 as the original words in Luke's Gospel.
What are you talking about, Bruce?
My misinformed theories have condemned me, James. Now I must wander YouTube comment sections for the rest of time. You still have time. Don't you see, James? We have exalted ourselves like the popes of old over the text of Scripture and have declared what is and what isn't Scripture.
Yeah, so that's great. It's the ghost of Christmas past, Bruce Metzger, the late great Bruce Metzger, Bart Ehrman's mentor, haunting James White. Saturday morning cartoons. Exactly. It's been a while since we did Saturday morning cartoons, right? So let's take a little pause, because we probably should go back into Cross Bible and take a look at Luke 23:34, right? I didn't really prepare that. Luke 23. Well, let me get Luke loaded up. 23. And I'll pin verse 34. And we'll take a look at what's going on using our comparison. 34. Sorry. All right. So we'll pin that. And let's keep Stephanus over here on the left. So o de Isus έλεγε pater άφες αυτής ου γαρίδας ητυπιούσι. Διαμεριζόμενοι δε τα ημάτια αυτού έλαβον κλήρον. Right? So let's see. Let's get the New American. Well, I think we should probably put the King James next to that, right? And then over here on the right, so I'm going to go from Textus Receptus to King James, because that's sort of the natural progression, right? So we're getting, we're down in verse 34. And by the way, so like I have 34 pinned, right? If you want to pin a verse in Cross Bible, hover over it and hit the pin button. Right now, I have the Greek text pinned to the left, which is what makes my book selector menu Greek, right? You can't see the book selector menu. If you want to pin the English, for example, like let's say I want the King James to be like my leftmost primary Bible, I'm gonna hit the pin button, and it's gonna shift that version over to the left. So now English is my primary. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then we're gonna go over here. We're gonna select. Hold on a second. I think my browser's messed up. Let me refresh this. So we got Spiros Philos. We still got modern Greek on the right. Give me a second. Let's change this to New American Standard. And and then we could probably add the critical text next to that. It's going to slow me down a bit because I'm going to have 4 Bibles, and I think you guys can't see that. Okay, yeah, you can't see it. All right. So good thing you didn't see all the, okay. Yes, forgive Stephen. He doesn't know what he's doing. So, so here we have a misalignment due to some missing verse above it. Let's see, where do these come? Okay, so we got the New American Standard over here. Let's get the SBL in the right-hand column. We're pinned on 34. And last week, if you didn't catch last week's live stream, please go back and watch that. We reviewed the verses in the New Testament that are omitted from the critical text. So you can see here that the alignment issue, let's see, we probably reviewed this last week. So you can see verse 9 is aligned, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Everything is in alignment up until verse 17. And you can see the New American Standard does have verse 17. Now, he was obligated to release them at the feast, one prisoner. So this is bracketed in the New American Standard, but it's just omitted from the critical text. The SBL Greek New Testament does not include that. And you can see this is actually Barabbas here. So for of necessity, he must release one unto them at the feast. And you can see this is, so this skips from 16 to 18, and it throws the rest of the versification off. Now, next week, I'm going to be presented with the newest patch, the latest version of Cross Bible that's going to be going live soon. And that is actually going to hopefully fix this error permanently. It's just the way that it's designed. It's, when there's a verse missing, it just needs to, the improvement is going to be to expand that gap so that the verses after it are not thrown out of alignment. Because since I have verse 34 pinned, and said Jesus, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And you can see the brackets here, right? Like they don't know what they do. This is bracketed in the New American Standard. And you can see that here we have, this is the misalignment, right? But here, if you compare the Textus Receptus to the SBL actually has it. It has it in a bracket. It's going to mention where there are textual differences, and basically they're not. They haven't removed it. So I don't know if James White would necessarily agree with the criticism that he doesn't believe. That like I haven't heard his official position on the authenticity of that verse, but we will look at his response to Jonathan's video, which is very interesting. And it's not really, there's no, knock against James White. Look, in my personal opinion, I think Jonathan's videos are very informative. It's a great, entertaining way to get yourself in the loop on sort of text critical issues. And, and I think it's all in good fun, right? Like it would be nice if look, James White said a few. We'll look at what James White said in reaction to this. But that's the verse that this is sort of focusing on, is Luke 23:34. Jesus saying, "Forgive them; they know not what they do." There are manuscripts that omitted, and that's why it's like bracketed in the critical text and in modern Bibles. And that's sort of the whole thesis of this video, is that actually is the original reading, and that that what textual critics have done by casting doubt on it is incorrect. That's Jonathan's position. That's what he's sort of like trying to get at with this cartoon.
Bruce, how can you say this? We are pioneers of our time, and we have begun to restore the scriptures to its original form, which has been lost for the last 1,600 years. Your research paved the way for this. I still don't understand.
You will, James. I'm out of time. Repent!
But I am irrefutable!
Hey guys, did you know some drivers are ditching their car insurance and they're doing this instead?
Father, forgive them. It's a variant. It's not in our earliest and best texts. My precious texts.
James White, wake up!
Ah!
What are these conspiracy theories you've been promoting, which speak out against Jesus' final words on the cross, found in Luke 23:34?
It's not in the earliest and best texts.
So you reject the texts that have come down through the official apostolic churches, which independently witness to this reading in Luke 23:34 for texts of unknown provenance?
Well, it must have been added by scribes to all the known texts.
More conspiracy theories, James. How did your pesky scribes get it into the majority of independent Greek, Latin, and Aramaic church texts in the ancient world without anyone ever noticing?
Maybe they were ninja scribes.
Who has bewitched you into believing these fairy tales? Why do you also reject the independent testimony of apostolic bishops and fathers of the church, to include myself, Clement, Hippolytus, Origen, Eusebius, Hilary, Basil, Gregory Nyssa, Ambrose, Didymus, Chrysostom, Jerome, Augustine, Theodoret, John Damascus, and many others?
Irenaeus, this is the consensus view of most modern textual critics of our day.
Okay, so you get the point. I don't want to spoil it. You guys should definitely watch the whole video. But the thesis here is that the textual critics are wrong to cast out on that textual variant, or basically on all textual variants. I mean, I think at some point I might get Jonathan on here to interview, to sort of have him explain his position a little bit more. But if we look at the timeline, I can kind of try my best to sort of channel this viewpoint here of the idea of an ecclesiastical text, right? That's what we're actually talking about. Because the idea of the ecclesiastical text is basically casting a net that is a bit wider than, say, Textus Receptus only ism, right? There is an ideal there is an idea that the Textus Receptus is the one true form of the Bible that Erasmus was able to reconstruct from earlier Byzantine witnesses, and that's what ended up in the King James. So now that's also the sort of branch of King James onlyism. And that is a separate school, right? That's not what Jonathan Sheffield is saying in my interpretation. So what Jonathan Sheffield tends to argue, and people in this sort of ecclesiastical text world, is what they are arguing is that basically there's a spectrum of Bibles that they consider to be acceptable representations of the autograph, or of the original, that the original has been preserved all the way from the beginning, and that it has been preserved specifically in this stream of transmission through the Byzantine text. Everything you see in red with white text being Byzantine, and then everything you see in red with black text being the Textus Receptus tradition, which is basically a distillation. It's like a coalescence of Byzantine readings into a more, into the standard printed Bibles of the, 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, right? Like that was dominant for those 300 years. And also the text of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is the patriarchal text right here represented in yellow, which is also coming from the Byzantine tradition, slightly different from the Textus Receptus, but more or less in the same vein. Very, very hard to find differences between them. And the majority text, the Hodson and Farstad version, the Robinson Pierpont version, which we have on Cross Bible because it's in the public domain. These sort of text critical scholarly reconstructions of the prototypical Byzantine text, like the Byzantine text that would have existed all the way back here in like the 3rd, 4th century. That is also sort of falling under the umbrella of this idea of an ecclesiastical text, a text that has been more or less shepherded by the church throughout the ages, in sort of contradistinction to the trend of the 19th, 20th, and now the 21st century that we're going to be talking about, the critical text, right? The critical text that initially I've colored in blue here because they were basically very, very beholden to the early text type that they have labeled the text type of the Alexandrian text, and the the Western text, the Byzantine text, the Caesarean text. All of these text types. This is sort of the old school traditional approach to textual criticism that I think Jonathan does a great job of explaining in his other video that we're going to get to, his Halloween special. And the manuscripts, the unsealed, the majuscule texts, the Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus, these were the two like big ones that that really changed the tide in textual criticism, that proponents of the idea of an ecclesiastical text really don't like, right? Really, they just say that, oh, even though these are early, they may either question the dating as being early. They may say, oh no, they're later forgeries. That's like one very extreme variety of this idea, or that they don't have provenance. We don't know where they came from. Like the Codex Vaticanus was in the Vatican Library for a while, and it's like, oh, that's that the idea is that they're corrupt, basically, that there are verses missing from it, that they were there in the predecessors, and that the scribes were just like really just did a hack job on the Bible, basically, especially the New Testament, that they just hacked it apart and ruined it. And that whenever they unearth more and more like early papyri that are mostly in Egypt, right, because of the dry climate, and it preserves these manuscripts sometimes in in trash heaps, that even though like every time we unearth an early papyrus, they match more or less this the text type, which we'll talk about, right? Like they match the Alexandrian text. They align very closely to Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. And that is sort of what has become the pillar of modern scholarship, which was basically to take the differences between Sinaiticus and Vaticanus and Alexandrinus and kind of find a middle ground between those Bibles, assuming that they are sort of a priori superior to later, or what was considered later, Byzantine manuscripts, and producing Lockman's Greek New Testament from that, Tragella's Greek New Testament from that, Tischendorf, Westcott Hort, the sort of the early inventors of the critical text, the people who really put this together for the first time, using primarily Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus. And then as the papyri began to sort of compile and get transcribed and get implemented into this, the textual apparatuses, the bottom section, the footnotes of these critical Bibles began to expand. And, it's just a constant work in progress to arrive eventually at, and I'm still sorry. So I keep forgetting to share my screen and look at the chat. Thank you for letting me know. I was sharing the screen, so I'll go back over this. So he would include the Latin Vulgate and the Peshitta as well. So yes, I was about to get to that. So let's review again. Sorry for the hiccup. So the idea of this ecclesiastical text, and I'm going to do my best to represent Jonathan's viewpoint on this, and then he can clarify this if I ever have him on the channel, if he doesn't hate me after this. So when the New Testament was first composed, right, and there was eventually some kind of a split into different varieties of the text that were later categorized as text types, which is currently sort of being reevaluated. And the problem is that the form of the text that ended up becoming dominant, that is represented here in red, the Byzantine text, most of the witnesses of the Byzantine texts are relatively late. Now, I think that this is probably largely due to the fact that because there were so many scriptoria, so many centers of copying in the Byzantine Empire, that they were just able to keep up with, like if you had a manuscript that you were using, a lectionary or a minuscule, like if any of these manuscripts that would become worn and not very usable, turning the pages are breaking off. It's kind of like the maybe it's hard to preserve this old Bible. You just make another copy, right? Like get one from the scriptoria. There were tons of scribes. They were just minting new Bibles like crazy, right? Which is why, especially if you look, like this is like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th century, lots of manuscripts were produced in this period, really making it so that your older copies obviously exist. So like the oldest witnesses that we have to what's considered the Byzantine text is from the 5th and the 6th century, right? So comparatively, these manuscripts from the 5th and the 6th century are pretty late. We have earlier, at least in terms of paleographic dating based on the handwriting style, based on what do you call it? Radiocarbon dating, right? Like we know it's pretty clear that like Codex Washingtonianus, for example, some of these P52 and all of these manuscripts that are in the blue here. So Sinaiticus, Vaticanus. Let me check the chat, make sure. So, okay, yeah, I'm awake. I'm paying attention. Sorry. Yes. So what Jonathan suggested was that he would include the Latin Vulgate and the Peshitta, meaning that even though technically the Latin Vulgate, which we don't have Jerome's Vulgate, by the way, so we have this copy of the Vulgate here, 1395. We have Codex Fuldensis Vulgate, Codex Amiatanus Vulgate. So we have these copies of the Vulgate, which really, we have Bobiensis and we have Vesicantipergensis. These are the manuscripts that are in the category that is called the Western text, which is currently sort of being reevaluated because sometimes we get texts that have been traditionally categorized as Western that have a lot in common in specific passages to what we would call the Alexandrian, or to manuscripts that have been categorized as Alexandrian, or to manuscripts that have been categorized as Byzantine, right? And so the whole idea of this neat arrangement of manuscripts into categories that we call text types is being reevaluated and basically overthrown, right? So we have this note here, just make sure I acknowledge this in the timeline, right? That New Testament textual critics who adhere to the Coherence-Based Genealogical Method, the CBGM that we're going to talk about, have largely abandoned the traditional categorization of manuscripts into text types as presented in this timeline, preferring instead to group textual variants into clusters. And this is something that if you know, like, obviously, like, I'm producing content that is going to, you know, hopefully help people understand this better. If you go to my blog, again, I have this video here, Codex Sinaiticus and the Critical Text, that explains the critical text behind the King James Bible, the legacy of Byzantium and Erasmus, the cross-Bible timeline. So these are two sort of videos that I invested a lot of time and energy into to try to elaborate on this concept. And Jonathan does a really good at his own presentation of this, of his sort of view on this. And where we can find that, again, let's go back to our Saturday morning cartoon. Before we get into that, let's just sort of, to continue the reaction video, let's look, since we already saw it, we just saw the Christmas special. Let's just, for sheer entertainment value, take a look at what, and I'm going.
Here comes this. People criticize, it's just stock animation stuff. It's nothing. No, man, I'll tell you what, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I mean, even if I wanted to, I mean, you've got singing and voices and editing and, oh my goodness. And so kudos on the excellent job.
Kudos to Jonathan.
For me, it's amazing is what an incredible waste of time. There's so much that this could be used for. So to defend an indefensible tradition is just so disheartening. So disheartening. So I've decided that it is a teachable moment, that it is something worth addressing, most definitely, because it is one realm of the. There's a lot of different defenses of what we would call the traditional text.
This is 2x speed, by the way. Link to this is in the description.
You can link find all text. I don't even know what text this particular person defends. If he follows Bergen, it couldn't be the TR specifically. It would have to be more of a general Byzantine priority concept, maybe a little something like, I guess, like Doug Wilson defended in our written debate, sort of.
So he's confused because he doesn't understand Jonathan Sheffield's position, right? Like, or at least he's trying to sort of cast doubt over it, right? So he's generally, I think, pretty familiar with people who support the idea of an ecclesiastical text, but this is where he's kind of making it clear that, like, look, I don't really even know, from watching that, like, basically what we saw in the video was a general sort of casting of aspersions onto modern scholarship, right? Like, just basically the critical text, and basically every single modern Bible that's created from the critical text that's not in the Latin Vulgate tradition or the King James, New King James tradition that follows the TR or some sort of offshoot of it, something in the ballpark of the TR. If it is based on the critical text, then it is corrupt. That's basically the thesis. Now, you should keep in mind that not only are all of the modern translations based on that, like the NIV, the NRSV, the NASB, the ESV, all of these Bibles that I've been scrambling to get onto Cross Bible through various licensing deals, those are all in Jonathan Sheffield's view and the view of many people who are on the TR only, the Textus Receptus only camp and the ecclesiastical text camp. Their position is basically that as of like the 19th and 20th century, that Bible scholarship has just gone into the toilet. It is just like they're removing verses that shouldn't be there. They're basing their opinions on manuscripts that are themselves corrupt, and therefore the Bibles that result are corrupt. And so basically, like, we got to throw out all those Bibles, right? And there's actually, I think there's a contract between the United Bible Society and all of the, the Every Tribe, Every Nation, and all these translation organizations, Wycliffe Bible translators. They all have an agreement that, like, all new Bible translations are favoring the critical text, right? Like, there is a sort of conspiracy among all of these. They're all conspiring, to create new Bibles from this particular Greek text. And what we're going to be going into today is the fact that Greek text is always evolving. It is not like if you are taking, the more conservative, let's say, like, ecclesiastical text position, you believe that the Bible is just fixed. Like as soon as they started printing Bibles, like, that was it. Like, we don't, there's slight updates. The apparatus could be updated to note some other, variant readings or whatnot. But the body of the text is, like, more or less been in its final form since the 16th, 17th century, and that there's no reason to update it, right? Like this is all just a waste of time. Now, the sources for a lot of what we're going to be discussing today are coming from Tommy Wasserman and Peter Gurry's book, New Approach to Textual Criticism. So this is available on the Cross Bible study resources page, so you can get the Amazon link to this. It's not an easy read. It's not an easy read. I'm going to try to condense it for you guys. Also, another book that Gurry contributed to, Elijah Hickson and Peter Gurry's Myths and Mistakes in New Testament Textual Criticism. Very, very good one. Scribes and Scripture, also Peter Gurry. I'm a big fan of Peter Gurry, and Peter Gurry makes a special guest appearance in the next video from Jonathan. We're gonna take a look at. But let's listen to a little bit more about what James is complaining about, and maybe we could hopefully get a better understanding of like what he's actually talking about, because like there's a lot of insider baseball on in James White. I mean, he's a smart guy, and you just have to. It takes a while to kind of follow what he's talking about.
I don't know if you go with the 1550 Stephanus. I just don't know. But what he claims is he's defending the apostolic text as if he can show us that the Textus Receptus or the Byzantine manuscripts go back to the apostles. He's really making that claim. Apostolic churches. I mean, historically, that's causes a chuckle because it's just simply not true. It's not documentable, but it's easy to make the claim, and then as long as you do it with cartoons, okay. But here's the background to this before I play, because we're going to play it. The background goes back to the preview. Why aren't you showing any of these? Okay, it doesn't want. Oh, because none of them are up. Great. This goes back to. Guess I got to do it this way. Back when Nabil Qureshi passed away, David Wood did a video where he contrasted the last words of Muhammad with the last words of Jesus and the last words of Nabil Qureshi. It's a great idea. There's a lot to be gained from looking at, for example, how Jesus treated his enemies over against how Muhammad treated his enemies. No question about it. But when I saw it, and I saw the focus upon Luke 23:34, I knew it was going to happen. Muslim apologists are well aware of textual criticism. You cannot expect them to be ignorant of these things. And so one of the Muslim apologists who studies textual criticism specifically pointed out that here David Wood is depending upon a text that's actually a textual variant. It's a textual variant that I have addressed in years past. In fact, we had Alan Kirshner on the program, I don't know, coming up on 10 years ago. Maybe less than that. I don't remember when it was. Somebody can look it up for me, but at least 5 years ago, between 5 to 10 years ago. We did an entire program just on Luke 23:34. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It is a textual variant. And what that means is there are manuscripts of the New Testament that do not contain a portion of that verse. And that is, Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They parted his garments. The rest of the verse is found in all manuscripts. And so I want to, since there's actually been some question about whether that's actually the case, let me show you. I have on the screen right now one of the earliest manuscripts of the Gospel of Luke. It may be the earliest, or it's P75. And right here, well, sort of, yeah, I guess you can sort of see it moving up and down there. Right there is where Father.
Yeah, thank you for that, James White. So you can see that the basis of this is the idea. Okay, well, first of all, he's talking about textual variants, right? And just to go back to the very basics, like what is the what does he mean by textual variant? What do scholars mean by textual variant? So again, looking at the timeline, basically, if you establish the Textus Receptus as the if the Textus Receptus is the standard by which all Bibles are measured, right? Starting with Erasmus, he was talking about the 1550 Stephanus, right? So 1550 Stephanus, you can see right here. So what he says is he said, I don't know what TR you're supporting. Is it Erasmus? Is it the 1550 Stephanus? Typically, TR onlyists are going to go from, are going to say that Beza improved on Stephanus and that Elzevir really locked it down, right? That the TR really hit its final form in the Elzevir Bible because that's the Greek New Testament that matches most closely. It was sort of back translated from the King James, right? They took the Greek and they made it sort of line up very, very cleanly with the King James. And the Elzevir Bible, you can compare the Elzevir Bible to the King James on Cross Bible. So he's saying that, when he talks about textual variants, basically any version of a verse, like any wording of a verse that does not align with the Textus Receptus, after the Textus Receptus becomes the standard, anything that doesn't match the Textus Receptus is a variant, right? It's a variety. It's a reading that is a variant or that diverges from the Textus Receptus. By definition, that's what a textual variant is in the New Testament, right? As opposed to the Old Testament, where a textual variant is any divergence from the Hebrew Masoretic text. The Septuagint differs from the Hebrew. That's a textual variant. It's not just, that's so basically if the the Latin Vulgate or the Peshitta, like down here, this other, you know, group of texts, the Western text, if there is a version of a verse, a variety, or a reading down here that conflicts with, that doesn't quite match the Textus Receptus, that is also a textual variant. But for, you know, if I'm not misstating Jonathan's position, or people who support this whole idea of an ecclesiastical text, for them, they cast the net wide enough so that textual differences between the Vulgate and the Peshitta and then Syriac and the Textus Receptus, those textual differences are kind of negotiable, where they're sort of like, they're opening up their position a little bit more than like a TR onlyist, like the Textus Receptus onlyist, the King James onlyist. They're a lockbox, right? They're just like, no, this is the standard. It is word for word perfect, and anything diverging from that, if it's the Vulgate or if it's the Peshitta, we don't accept it. This is our standard. It's a very objective standard, right? Whereas the sort of idea of an ecclesiastical text, that it lets in a little bit more, right? It lets in this Eastern Orthodox Bible. It lets in the reconstructions of the Byzantine text. It's just basically saying that there is a sort of a church authorized, condoned transmission over here in the red, and also over here in the green, where basically the green tradition here, the Western text, is the version of the text that the Catholic Church sort of oversaw, which has a little bit of Greek interspersed with mostly Latin, you know, Vulgate and Old Latin manuscripts, right? And also within this tradition, there's a difference between the, you know, sort of flavors of the, you know, the Latin text, because we have Old Latin, Vetus Latina, and we have the Vulgate, right? And then, you know, the Syriac Peshitta is not necessarily in this group, which is why the Syriac Peshitta is sort of colored in gray here. The idea is that basically what you see here in blue and what you see here in orange and yellow, like the whole idea, you know, these manuscripts that really are divergent, that really are, you know, just chock full of textual variants. They just have a lot of variation, especially, you know, Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, the texts that are at the basis of modern Bibles, that's all just like the textual variants there are wrong. And so that's the position that James White is pushing against. So when he goes back, what did he cite? He cited P75, right? That's what he cited. So he went back to P75, and what you can do here is you can actually type Command F, and you could say P75. Here it is. So he went to P75. See how easy that was? See how quick that was? You guys can do that too. If you go to P75, you know, it's dating around 175 to 225 CE. It contains extensive portions of Luke 3 through 24, John 1, making it one of the earliest and most significant New Testament manuscripts. It represents the Alexandrian text type, aligns closely with Codex Vaticanus, with 94% agreement in Luke and 92% in John. It's housed in the Vatican Library. So this is specifically a super old, like one of our oldest manuscripts that does not have Jesus saying that, right? And so either somebody took it out of that man, like it can only be one of two things. Either like there was a prior tradition that had Jesus saying that, and then by the time the copyist was making that copy, and we only have a small piece of it, at some point these gospels were complete, right? They took it out. And the textual critics that are wrestling with this, that have put this in brackets or omitted it completely, they are struggling with a rationale for why it would be removed. Now, if I had Jonathan Sheffield on here, I might ask him about that, and he would say, "Oh, well, he would probably just speculate that there was just, you know, there was a lot of heresy in, you know, the early church. Like there were scribes that were just either heretical or sloppy, or they were producing Bibles that were not sanctioned by the church." And that the ones that we ended up with that have those words in there, those were sanctioned by the church. Those were shepherded. The church was the custodian of that text. And that is specifically what you find in just the vast majority of manuscripts, right? You find, because there were so many manuscripts produced in the Byzantine Empire that fit that. Like basically, if you just threw a dart at this Bible timeline, which you can, by the way, if you go to the Cross Bible store and purchase one of these timelines. And if you want a free one, make sure you put Bible Timeline in the chat and DM me on Discord, and I will send you a free one. But you can order a timeline here, and you can throw a dart at the timeline when you get it in the mail. I will ship it right away, and you will probably hit one of these Byzantine texts, right? You'll hit one of these Byzantine manuscripts, one of the ones in red. And so if you hit one of these, odds are these are very, it's going to be a complete Bible, and it's going to have that textual variant in there. It's not a textual variant, right? Like if it's included, it's not a textual variant, right? It's a textual variant because it's missing from other Bibles. So the Jonathan Sheffield has the numbers on his side, right? Just sheer numbers and the sort of volume of the texts that are actually getting copied. That verse is just ubiquitous. It's everywhere, right? And the same thing in the Latin Vulgate tradition. So what so the position that you can take here, if you're a proponent of the idea of an ecclesiastical text, is that, okay, the Peshitta, the Latin Vulgate, the Byzantine text, they have their differences, but in terms of the key, like the things that matter, like the readings that matter, like Jesus saying, "Forgive them that they know not what they do," because that's somewhat doctrinal. It's pretty important, right? It's an important variant. There's a reason why when the critical text, like when the NASB is bracketing something, it means that like it's not in the base, like it's not in their Greek text that they're actually translating from, right? I don't know. Do I have it here from last week? It's not in the critical text. But they're putting it there because they know if they take it out, they're going to trigger a lot of people, right? And so it's an important variant. And so that's what James White is referring to. He's pointing at that specific codex, and he's saying, "Hey, look, guys, it's not here." Right? He's pinpointing it in the actual manuscript. Let's get it up. Let's get it back up.
Again, to know what they do should be found. As you can see, it's not there. There's no evidence of any tampering. The rest of the text isn't squished together or expanded out as if something's been erased. P75, which is late 2nd century, which is also if you recall, I've talked about P75 and Codex Vaticanus. Codex Vaticanus and P75, we know from the analysis of these two manuscripts, go back to an earlier, they're connected. Vaticanus is not a copy of P75. But
so, sorry, let me go back just one, please bear with me. So late 2nd century, P75, late 2nd century. What you're going to notice probably as a trend is, let me pull this up. What you're going to notice as a trend is basically what you're going to find on Cross Bible. I've tried really hard to research the heck out of this to make sure it was as accurate as I could be. So P75, if you're looking on Cross Bible, you're going to see that it's dated around from 175 to 225 CE. Now, what I've done now, if it were dated to that range, I don't know, maybe I need to reinvestigate this. As far as I recall, there are, like, if you look at if you read the work of Brent Nongbre on his that book here, I like to show the books on the screen, but it's on the Cross Bible recommended reading page. There are debates in the scholarship in terms of the date range, like the earliest possible date versus the latest possible date of a biblical manuscript, right? He's putting P75 in the late 2nd century, which would be here. Now, my date range here is going from the late 2nd century as late as the late 4th century, right? So typically with a lot of these, you'll have these short little bars that say that, okay, scholars have dated this manuscript from to this century, more or less, right? Give or take 50 years, give or take 100 years. When I put this together, my assumption for P75 was that at the earliest, it's late 2nd, and at the latest, it's late 4th century, right? I'm trying my best with all of this graphical representation to be as fair as possible. So for example, Codex Bobiensis, K, is dated between the 4th and the 5th century. And that's what these bars represent, right? So if somebody in my description here is giving me 175 to 225, if somebody were to write in and point out the fact that, and I welcome everyone to do this, by the way, I'm going to drop another link to the Discord in the chat to make sure that people are getting on the Discord, because there's the Discord link at the top. get on the Discord, get in the channel for the timeline of the Bible. And if you have reason to believe that the date range for Papyrus 75 goes from 175 to 225, and that there's no scholar in the world who would ever accept a dating of P75 in the 4th century, if somebody can show that to me, I will shorten this bar. Right? Like this is a crowdsourced thing. This has happened, by the way. Like people have written to me and said, hey, you know, your dating is too early or too late for this manuscript, and here's the reason why. And they've given me pointed me in the direction of some scholarship, and this is a work in progress. So as far as I recall, even though maybe it's commonly dated from 175 to 225, a lot of those, I'm hesitant with regards to the dating. If people are really, if it's too narrow, right? Like I think this may be a bit later, but this is the one he's pointing at, and he's saying like, look, if you have a manuscript that's this early that doesn't have those words, and it's matching Vaticanus, and Vaticanus also doesn't have those words, and what he's saying is that Vaticanus is not a direct copy of P75 and vice versa, right? Like we just know that there could be. He's assuming P75 is older than Vaticanus, and that it's probably just in the same stream of transmission. So that's what, when scholars are throwing out like, oh, the P75 Vaticanus and Alexandria and blah, 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 like the timeline of the Bible is attempting to visualize that for you, so that basically, you know, there's some prototype here that's like, you know, the proto-Alexandrian text that we don't have anymore. Like we don't have a copy of it, but we have lots of copies of it. Right. Like, so we have these, I just contradicted myself. These manuscripts are copies of whatever came before, but we don't have what came before. Right. We have just later copies. And so they are in this tradition that, according to, you know, this is the tradition that James White is affirming, because this is the tradition that's in all of these Bibles, right? Like all of our modern Bibles are based on this for the most part. They take into account readings that are coming from the Byzantine tradition. They don't discard it, but they very much they weigh very heavily these manuscripts. And so that's what he's talking about. And thank you. Your integrity and fairness is appreciated. I'm just trying to be objective, obviously, also because I'm not a scholar. I'm not a textual critic. I don't like, you know, I'm not a specialist. I don't have a degree. So this timeline of the Bible is an attempt to kind of democratize all of the research that I've done, you know, assemble all the research that I've done and democratize it so that it's like accessible. Because I think most people, you know, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from people who have thanked me for this resource, who have ordered the timeline online, and who have said, I wish this were available when I was in seminary. Like, you know, I wish, you know, and I've gotten some constructive criticism from professionals. I got a message from somebody recently who made some really helpful suggestions about how I should revise some of these family 1 and 13 manuscripts over here. So I have to make some updates to this section based on some feedback that I got from a professional scholar who was kind enough to go through this and see, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. You know, maybe you need to tweak some of this. So again, I welcome anybody's feedback. If they have any suggestions, you know, just point me, just cite your sources, please. Like point me in the direction of some scholarship that I can verify the information for. And I shift stuff around here every once in a while. And the version that you're going to buy online, if you order the poster, is this sort of like, you know, this is called the Timeline 2.0. It's 2.0 because the 1.0 version had some errors that I fixed. There will eventually be a 3.0 version and a 4.0 version, but I think that I settled on the fact that the 2.0 version of this timeline was good enough to print. Right? Like there's going to be some, you know, if you get it in the mail and you frame it up there, I apologize in advance if there's going to be a big shift in the future, and I'm going to maybe, you know, shorten the timeline of some, you know, shorten the date range of some Bible. Like it happens, right? Like I'm not error prone. But I spent enough time on this to where the version that you're going to get if you order a print, or if you vote in the chat to get a free version, you jump in the Discord and message me. It's pretty good. I mean, I think it's it's a pretty good representation of my research, of what I have put into it. So let's go back now that we have a better understanding of what James White is talking about, and listen to more what he has to say.
of Vaticanus and P75, you have a reading that simply has to be considered to be one of the most primitive readings in New Testament textual tradition. And so, in light of that, there's P75, and here is every time I change this, they have got to come up with a better way of working this thing. It is just here is Codex Vaticanus at the very place where, once again, it would be right there, and it's not there. Oh, that's not how it's supposed to look. It's only supposed to be this part, but okay. Anyway, you can figure it out from there. That's Codex Vaticanus, and P75 both do not have that particular reading. So, likewise, there is yet another that I want to show you real quick, and that is Codex Washingtonianus. Now, what's important about this is Washingtonianus is not one of the dreaded quote-unquote Alexandrian manuscripts.
I'm not going to jump back to the timeline because I showed you Codex Washingtonianus already, I hope, if I had it on screen.
Is Proto-Byzantine in many of its readings, and yet Washingtonianus, likewise, does not contain this particular reading. It would be right here, the end of this line right here. It is not there. And there is a variant in Codex Sinaiticus where it is taken out at a later point in time, by 7th century, which means even that far down the road, a person who had access to Sinaiticus still had access to other manuscripts that did not contain this particular text. Now, we talked about what some of the reasons for this might be in the program that we had on the subject. You can take that down. And we discussed, some of the theories. One of the theories is that early anti-Judaism would result in the removal of the text because you would want to not have the Jews being forgiven for the crucifixion of the Messiah. And so some people have theorized this would be behind the removal of the text. Others have theorized, like Philip Comfort in his textual commentary, that the reason for the inclusion of the text would be you've got Stephen forgiving those who are stoning him. You can't have a martyr being more forgiving than the Messiah himself at his execution. And so you have competing theories as to why would there be the insertion, why would there be a deletion. There doesn't seem to be anything in the form of the text itself, homoteleuton or haplography or any of the various scribal errors that are standard in copying of manuscripts that would explain it. But the point is, you have very early texts, and you have a wide variety of texts. I have here, I'm not going to bring it up, Codex-Based Canterbury-Gensis. Very unreliable text, but it doesn't have it originally, but has it inserted at a later point in time.
Yeah, Codex-Based is one of my favorites. I'm going to produce some content on Codex-Based. I would like to also get Codex-Based on Cross Bible because it is a wild Bible. It's, to my knowledge, I don't believe there is a single English translation available of Codex-Based, which I also would like to endeavor to produce myself someday. If again, go sign up for Cross Bible, support us, support us on Patreon. I'll drop a link to the Patreon link. I have a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline that I just can't quite get out at this point because we are still very much reliant on the support of people on our Patreon, people who are signing up for the software. Here's a link to the Patreon. I would love to invest some time in getting Codex-Based up there. It has a text of Luke Acts that's like 5% longer, or like 10% longer than most Bibles. It has a lot of really cool textual variants, and it's the most interesting thing about that Bible. And sorry, I can't skip the opportunity to not show Codex-Based. Sorry, I'm going to jump back into the timeline of the Bible, make sure I get it up on screen. So what he's referring to, so here's Codex Washingtonianus, right? So he's saying the Codex Washingtonianus, here it's colored in black because it's an eclectic text. It has a mix of readings, right? It's a significant Greek unsealed manuscript. It has okay, so notable for its mixed text type, right? That's what he's saying. So it contains elements of the Byzantine, Western, Caesarean, Alexandrian text type. It's all mixed, right? And this again brings up the whole question of like, well, what are these text types useful for if we get manuscripts that are just like, all over the place, right? If the text types are legitimate, it means that whoever made this manuscript is like looking at a bunch of text types and pulling it all, sort of eclectically, like eklektos is select, right? Eklego, like I'm selecting in Greek. So eclectic means selective, means you're selecting from different sources and you're putting them all together, right? So he's saying like, look, Washingtonianus is early. Washingtonianus, if you scroll, it's 4th, 5th century, right? He said that. So if Washingtonianus is missing that verse, And then you come down and you're in the 3rd and 4th century and you're looking Sinaiticus, you know, he said a later scribe took it out because Sinaiticus has corrections, right? Vaticanus doesn't have it. Alexandrinus doesn't have it. If you're going down, and then he said, and then Beze Cantabrigensis. So this is a manuscript that scholars really like to, like they like to quote it when it suits them, but then they mention, but it's totally unreliable. Right. So if it's unreliable, why are you even mentioning it? Right. Like he's saying like, well, it doesn't, he says in the same sentence, it's unreliable, but it's an early manuscript that doesn't have this verse. Therefore, even though it's unreliable, we're still counting it. Like if it has evidence in favor of my theory, I'm going to count it. And commentaries on Acts also very much favor the D text. This is what this is called, the D text, because it has some wild stuff. Like, I mean, just in terms of the text, if you're comparing the Greek of Codex, and Codex Beze is a diglot. It has the Latin and the Greek side by side, and they're lined up, which is really interesting. This is because it was produced before there were verse numbers. This is sort of the earliest version of versification that we have, because the scribe is lining up the Latin and the Greek text. It has some really interesting stuff going on in Luke Acts. So that is what he is talking about right there. It's my favorite manuscript. Oh, hey, Witch Doctor. I love Codex Beze. So that I just had to share, because I don't want anybody to not be following what he's talking about there.
That this is the data. This is the information that we possess. And the video we're looking at lies. L-I-E. There isn't any excuse for it. Mr. Sheffield, you lied. You need to repent of it. I'm calling you on it right now. He called an attack on David Wood. That is so absurd that there's no credibility left of him. That's why I can't take it seriously. It was a lie to say in this video that I attacked David Wood. I did not. That's absurd. And what's frightening is when people think that being truthful with history and truthful with the facts means you're attacking someone. I fear for the future of apologetics if this is what the future of apologetics looks like. On the one hand, you've got these people who are so defensive of a tradition that they will invest this kind of effort in the Christmas season to slander somebody. It is.
How dare you, Jonathan, invest this kind of effort in producing an animated video? Look, I mean, like, this is what Jonathan sincerely believes, right? Like, I don't necessarily endorse or condone this viewpoint, but if you want to, like, at least share your viewpoint with people in a way that they'll understand it, in a way that's entertaining, why not produce a cartoon about it, right? Like, I mean, I wish I had the skills to produce a cartoon about it. I would love to talk to Jonathan at some point, and talk him into animating some of my stuff. The outrage here is like kind of very palpable. I don't know. I think it's funny.
It's a slanderous video. I mean, I'm honored that you would think that it's worthwhile to invest this kind of time on someone such as myself, but still, it's just simply slanderous in what it says, associating me with heretics and just all the rest of this kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, Brian Matheson tells us September 5th, 2008. So right, almost 10 years is when I addressed this subject with Alan Kirshner. So if you want to hear a longer, more in-depth, I don't think I showed Washingtonianus and all the rest of that stuff. I think we just discussed it at yeah, it's true. We couldn't have shown a whole lot back in that age as it was. But
Jonathan,
that's the date on the dividing line, which you can find on Sermon Audio and YouTube and so on and so forth. There's a YouTube link to it there, so you can go back and watch it there. Now, I should say, Mr. Sheffield wrote to me, and he said, I'm not your enemy. Good to know. It's nice to know that my friends will lie about me, associate me with Marcion, say I have to repent, put Bruce Metzger in hell. These are what friends do. Yay, glad I have friends like that. I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously. It's really hard to take you seriously, sir. Not only just because of the vacuousness of the argumentation, but just, I didn't attack David Wood. And for you to think, well, you agreed with the Muslims. I agreed that there is a textual variant there, and that we need to be aware of that, and we need to be honest about that. That's the only way I can turn around and say to the Muslim, you need to be honest about the variants that exist in the Palimpsest and all the other things in the Quran. You've got to be consistent, and you traditionalists can't be. That's where you're in error. That's where you're wrong. You apply one standard defense of your traditions and something completely different when you criticize others.
Yeah, and this is really, I think, the through line here. And I'm a big fan of James White, by the way. Like, I love James White. I have binge watched so much of James White, especially in his like debates. Like, if you want to really be entertained, watch James White debating King James Onlyists, Pastor Stephen Anderson. Like, the debate between James White and Stephen Anderson, I have watched that debate so many times. At the end of it, like, James White like rage quits. He's like, "You're a heretic," and it's just great. It's great, like Jerry Springer stuff. And it's informative. Like, he's a very smart guy. Like, and I can imagine this conversation or this exchange with like Jonathan telling him like, "I'm not your enemy. I'm just like, he's criticizing him in his way." And, clearly James is really, James White is very offended by this. But you know, I think it's a reasonable position. The thing that it is very the reason why James White thinks that this is so important is because the thing that he's commenting about Muslim apologetics is that Muslims who are hip to the fact that Christian Bibles are being updated, they use that as an attack vector because they say, look, your text isn't stable. You got all these textual variants. The Bibles are being updated. They use this against Christians, and then Christian apologists feel the need to basically take a stand on they're either going to side with modern Bible scholarship and say, oh, no, all of these modern Bibles are correct. And basically we were in error for a long time. There was the Byzantine tradition. They were sort of reproducing errors a lot for hundreds of years. And then we've kind of all converged now on the correct version of the Bible that we can get behind. We understand these textual variants and we can explain them away. And sort of we've moved past it. Neo Prototype says, Jerry Springer with religion. Maybe hell is real after all. Well, and I don't know necessarily. I mean, I think Jonathan Sheffield, put Bruce Metzger there in chains because he's obviously not a fan of Bruce Metzger. I'm a big fan of Bruce Metzger. I think he did a lot of great foundational work, but he didn't. I don't think he said that he was in hell. I mean, maybe he thinks he's in hell. I don't know. I just saw a sort of new version of the Christmas Carol, but I don't know, Jonathan, if you're in the chat still, do you think Bruce Metzger's in hell? I don't know. I see all of this is good fun, but obviously James White doesn't agree.
And that's just simply not being truthful. This is a deceptive, dishonest video. And I'm just being straight up about it. Okay. So let's take a look at what it said. Basically, here's the claim. The claim is, Mr. Sheffield, is that there is an apostolic text that you have to be able to see.
There you go.
The reason he doesn't care about P75 or Vaticanus is, as he says himself. In fact, let me see if I have it here. Let me see. No, that's not it. Let's see. Is that it there? Yeah. Okay. Someone mentioned to Mr. Sheffield on his YouTube page one day ago about P75. He says, but where does P75 come from? You need to establish the chain of custody back to an official Greek church. Now, of course, he cannot do that with received text. It's impossible. No one who reads the New Testament with any level of honesty, knows anything about history of the New Testament, thinks you could do that with the received text. You can't do it. He likes to quote Irenaeus. It's real simple. Where's my? Well, that's right. I keep forgetting to bring it in here. Well, I can pull it up, but I definitely need to make a note. I need to bring a UBS text in here. I've got them in the other room. You can do it with Nestle-Aland, though it's not. Nestle-Aland doesn't do nearly as much of the patristics as the UBS text does. I thought I had.
Yeah, Nestle-Aland. So let's again, just so we make sure we're following along with James White and we're not confused about any of these references. He's talking about the Nestle-Aland because that's the topic of today's video, which we haven't even got to. Nestle-Aland. So the text that he pulls up, he flashes a Bible in front of you. That Bible is represented on the timeline here. It's the Nestle-Aland 28 edition, right? That's the edition we're on right now. Now we're about to get the 29th edition. It's coming out soon. Some of it's been released already. That is using the ECM, the Editio Critica Maior, right? So we're getting that. And I am really angling right now with Dr. Florian Voss at the German Bible Society to get the Nestle-Aland 29 in the UBS 6, the updated text with the updated apparatus. I want that on Cross Bible. It will, I can't say definitively, but again, with your support, if you guys can sign up for the, at least the $5 a month tier on Cross Bible. If you subscribe on Cross Bible, you get access to our Bible study features, our notes, the bookmarks. There's a $10 tier. There's a $20 patron tier for people who really who can afford to support us and help us pave the way to develop new features and to license the NA29. It's not going to be free. But it's going to be a Bible that you're going to be able to access when you're on the paid tier. You get a free Bible timeline poster if you sign up on that tier. Same thing on Patreon. So I have similar pricing tiers on Patreon, $5, $10, and $20 tiers. This is a really ambitious, costly project to run the software, to develop the software, to improve the UI, improve the user interface, get more Bibles in more languages, and to access top-notch scholarly resources like the upcoming Nestle-Aland 28 and the UBS 6. So he's talking about the NA 28, and what he's saying is basically that if you have a UBS 6, or if you have the Nestle Aland 28, Metzger is in the YouTube comment section, not hell. Yes. Okay. So it was so. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not? All right. So hopefully my descriptions were vivid enough that where you could imagine this, but now I'm going to show you because I didn't have it on screen. The thing is, when you add, like I'm still getting used to StreamYard. When you add something, it like takes you over to it and you feel like, okay, I've added it, but you have to add it into the onto the stage. Hold on a second. Let me put myself down here. All right. So there. So he is flashing the NA28. And what he's saying is that the NA28, to some extent, if you look down in the apparatus, you have all of those textual variants there. So even if they take something out of the body of the text, like that textual variant in Luke, they're still going to put it at the bottom. It's still in the apparatus. So there is it really boils down to personal preference for, what Bible you prefer. Sometimes I like to have myself a nice, like the ecclesiastical text, right? I like to have like the TR or the Greek patriarchal text in front of me. And I like to be able to see all of those textual variants that are what we call textual variants in the body of the text, right? I like to see those verses in there, right? I don't like the verse gap sometimes. Like I don't like the missing number. I just want to see it there. You can bracket it, but like I prefer to see it. But if I'm reading Nestle Aland and I'm going along with the idea that, okay, this is like a reconstruction of an earlier version or this sort of Alexandrian flavor of the text, you have a textual apparatus at the bottom that tells you that there are other readings available. So what he's saying is that to some extent, yes, you can sort of reconstruct what would have been the earliest text. Now he's saying that basically the complaint that he got was that Jonathan can't. So Jonathan's pushback regarding P75. So he rejects P75, even though it's really old. He's saying this is a fragment of a Bible that goes back to some earlier Bible that's over here somewhere that was obviously a copy of an older copy, but that, even though technically, I mean, this would have been probably under the jurisdiction of like some Coptic, church, right? Like this, if this was copied in Alexandria or its environs, it would have been associated with the church. So it probably wasn't copied in just like a basement somewhere. But what he's saying is that he's leaning on the textual traditions that came out of the sort of under the guidance of the Catholic Church, like under the purview of the Catholic Church, these manuscripts would have been copied, and that we have church fathers who are citing, textual readings that are supported by these manuscripts, and that basically over in Byzantium, these would have been officially sanctioned copies, like that were under the Eastern Orthodox Church. You have the Western Catholic Church, you have the Eastern Orthodox Church, you have the texts that are produced in the scriptoria that are in those territories that we can basically assume that they would have had some kind of oversight. They would have been read in the churches. They would have been accepted by the church leaders. And that if you go back here, you don't have that because they're so old, right? Like we just don't know like who exactly copied them, where, like what's the provenance of these manuscripts. I'm trying to steelman Jonathan's position that basically we don't know where any of these came from. We don't know where Sinaiticus came from. It appeared, it was discovered in a library and under Mount Sinai, Vaticanus. Like these are not reliable manuscripts. They're old. Maybe Jonathan would concede that they're old, but we just like they were unearthed, and like it seems like they were produced. Like this is the work of some shoddy scribal practice where they were just like leaving lines out of it and messing it up. These are all messed up. So the fact that the majority of modern Bibles are produced and translated from a reconstructed text that favors those manuscripts, that is like inherently wrong. And the volume of the gravity of this error, according to Sheffield, it extends basically from the UBS 5, Nestle Aland 28, SBL text, the ECM that we're going to get into, and then just ASV, NASB, NLT, ESV. Like this is just junk, right? Like NRSV, like it's bad. NIV, bad. Like just Bible after Bible, just using the scholarly reconstruction as the basis of their translation from Greek into English. World English Bible, good. Greek Orthodox Bible, good. New King James, good. Right. So basically, you're a needle in a haystack. Like you're the reliable, the vast minority of Bibles available in today's market are representing the ecclesiastical correct text in his view. And in James White's view, it's the opposite, that the majority of modern Bibles have now course corrected and now are representing a reconstruction that is as close as possible as the original to the original text. Right. That is the crux of what is in this discussion. That's what's going on in this response video. So let's go back to what he says. Sorry. Add to stage. Boom. Boom. Boom.
No, I do not have a UBS text. UBS is better for this, mostly online.
Really wanted to show you the NASB and the UBS. If I had them next to me, I would pull them up and flash them on the camera too. I don't have them handy.
Materials will have it. UBS 5 is really good for it. I could bring up Accordance and show it to you here, but get a critical edition of the Greek New Testament. And he loves to quote, for example, Irenaeus. Okay, open up almost any page in the New Testament. Go to the Gospels. Find a semi-meaningful variant that actually impacts the meaning of the text, and then look up a few of them. Follow through just a few passages. What you will find is you will find Irenaeus and Tertullian, and you will find that they will be cited on both sides of a variant. You'll have Irenaeus 1/4, or Irenaeus Latin versus Irenaeus Greek, or Tertullian 2/3. What is all that about? Well, 2 out of 3 times he agrees with this, and 1 out of 3 times he agrees with the other reading. And Irenaeus is 1 out of 4 this way, and the Latin of Irenaeus reads one way, and the Greek of Irenaeus reads the other way. See, the problem is we don't have nearly as critical edition of the patristic materials as we do in the New Testament. We don't have this early manuscripts of patristic materials as we have nowhere close to what we have in the New Testament. And not only that, the citations of scriptural materials from patristic sources are notoriously vague. And why is that? Because very often, just as in, well, let me give an example. Let me give an example before we get to this. Give an example. Matthew 23:37. Jesus is praying for Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets, stone those who sent you. How often would I have done what? Well, if you're listening to Norman Geisler, it's going to be, how often would I have gathered you under my wings, but you would not? Because he often miscites it, because that's what he thinks it means. But that's not what it says. He's going by memory, but his memory is influenced by his theology. And it's how often I've gathered your chicks or your children, depending if you're looking at Luke or Matthew, I guess. I don't remember which one's which, but it's different than the you who would not. Now, if someone digs up recordings of Norman Geisler, to where Norman Geisler becomes a church father 5,000 years from now, does that mean that there was confusion in this day as to the actual reading of the text? Or is it recognizable that even when writing, people will quote a text or just make reference to a text or use the language of a text without actually double checking it, quoting it exactly? They're paraphrasing. But it's not just that. Years ago, I played a clip of R.C. Sproul. And R.C. was quoting it from memory, and he misquoted it. He skipped the same part. Now, not because of a theological issue, but it's the way the mind works. And so you can pretend all you want that you can take the TR or some Byzantine text. I can trace this to the Church of Ephesus. It's a fantasy. Absolutely. Show me the manuscripts. Show me the manuscripts from the 2nd century, contemporaneous P75, says this was copied under apostolic authority in the Church of Ephesus, and it reads such and such. You don't have it, and you know it. You know it. Pure fantasy. So the whole idea is, well, we don't have to worry about P75, we don't have to worry about Washingtonianus, because you need to establish the chain of custody back to an official Greek church. I suppose that also means that you would believe everything Irenaeus said in his writings, right? Like that stuff about Jesus being over 50 years of age when he died. You agree?
Yeah, and that's like totally irrelevant. So I think you get it. I think, shots fired. James White retorts and says that basically his point is true, though, that really, if you adopt the position of the ecclesiastical text or if you're a TR onlyness, like it really doesn't matter how many manuscripts you can go and dig in Egypt to your heart's content. You can unearth a 1st century manuscript for all they care. It will not matter. Like you cannot, no new evidence would ever trump the official Bible of the church. Like you couldn't, like it is a position that is insulated from evidence. And so the position that James White takes in favor of the critical text is that, no, if you unearth a new manuscript that comes from the 2nd century, that's like a big chunk of Luke or, Paul, and then you compare it to the critical text. And if it's like, if it presents evidence that is satisfactory to textual critics, they will update the Bible with it. And that's the whole point. That's the whole thing, point of this video. And we're going to stop watching James White gripe. And we're going to go to a new video.
In other words,
that is super cute. Hold on a second. Let me skip this ad.
text types.
So this is gonna have to watch another ad. Sorry. So the point is Nestle on headquarters. So the point here is that the two different perspectives here is like, is the Bible fine? Like, is the ink dry on the Bible, or are we still tweaking it? And it's a question of like, do we keep tweaking it when more evidence presents itself, like more textual evidence, more manuscripts, more readings, or is it fixed? And for people like, the viewpoint presented in these cartoons is that it's fixed. No, it's done. You can keep tweaking it, all you scholars and all you the vast majority of people reading, modern Bibles. You can knock yourself out updating the Bible ad infinitum, but we have our text. We had it in the 16th, 17th century, and it's good. There are no updates. And by the way, I think this would be Nestle Holland with a dash and then one L. Sorry, little typo there. Great stuff.
It's alive!
Well, what do we have here? I see we have an adorable little princess that needs some candy in her bag. Oh, along with a spooky ghost. Oh, and a creepy zombie. And what do we have here?
Bart Ehrman.
Wait a minute. Is that the funeral mask formerly known as first century Mark? Dan Wallace, you sly devil, tried to trick me again. Just like in our debate. But I gotcha. Good try, though, buddy old pal.
There's no fooling you, Dr. Ehrman. You got me.
And this must be James White dressed up as the original inerrant text.
Yeah, so and you can see that the inside joke here is that the critical text is a Frankenstein's monster, right? So it's a hodgepodge of like Vaticanus readings from Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, Beze. He's got Beze up there, Codex Alexandrinus. So you're basically making a collage of a new Bible that never existed, right? Like it's a reconstruction of what is assumed to be the Ausgangstext, or like the sort of the original, like as close to the original as we can possibly get. That's what this sort of like the stitching is supposed to represent.
I see you finally pieced it all together, James.
Ha ha ha. Well, my actual costume is the Nestle Holland 29th edition of the original inerrant text. And with the breakthrough of the CBGM, I'll be able to recreate a new costume version of the original text every year that I can wear. So how about them apples? Anyway, let's get ready to go bike riding as we planned before it gets too late.
James White, you've got to come back with me.
Where?
Back to the future.
No, Stewie. Dr. Ehrman and Dan Wallace are here, and I can't leave them behind. We were just getting ready to take our bikes out for a spin.
There's no need for them. This concerns you, James.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about? What happens to me in the future? Does YouTube cancel the dividing line or something?
No, James. They'll view the show 10 out of 5. I think. It's the text of the New Testament, James. Something's got to be done about the text.
Well, what happens to the text?
Hello, anybody home? Hey, think, James White, think. The obvious question is what's been happening to the text under the guise of modern critical text theory. But just me telling you a little bit about the future of the text will cause a chain reaction of events that will create an entire new timeline. Now off of your bike. The game is afoot.
Hey, Stewie, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Well, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Where are we headed, Stewie?
I'm glad you asked, James. Well, in order to help you grasp the future of modern New Testament textual criticism, you must first understand its past. Basically, how did we get into this mess that we are currently in, which has mucked everything up?
Mess?
I see that the postmodern narrative that modern text critics have been stewing since the late 18th century has deluded your senses, James. Things will clear up soon, but more on that later. By the way, James, I think it's really cool that we're hanging out together. I'm a big fan. I'm absolutely cuckoo for the Dividing Line show. But, James, when I watch your segments on New Testament textual criticism, you tend to avoid the real issue.
What do you mean, Stewie?
Oh, don't play dumb, James. You sidestep the real issue by talking about the comma of John and Revelation 16:5. Really, one word, James? Like that's the problem? And let's not forget how much you love talking about the medieval manuscripts used by Erasmus. Ugh, such trivial matters. When will you learn, James? It's not about the TR, but the text of Antioch. And it's at Antioch where we begin our journey.
Antioch? Great Scott!
To infinity and beyond, and beyond. we are, James, where it all began, ground zero, where Hort first launched his attack in 1881 with the introduction of his theory on the text of Antioch.
The text of Antioch?
Oh, how you cringe at the very words, James. Surely I can see your reluctance to share such information on the dividing line, having to explain to your sycophants why the biblical text preached on from Antioch by John Chrysostom in 385 AD, from the oldest surviving church going back to the apostles, was secondary in origin, and did not represent the type of text used in the 2nd and 3rd centuries by the Greek Orthodox churches, and that for the next 1500 years, the Greek, Latin, and Aramaic apostolic churches were using the wrong type of text. Wrong text? Where do I get the correct text? I'm sorry to tell you this, man, but according to James White, you'll have to wait until 1881 until the correct one is published, and then subscribe for the yearly updates. Remember, James, Dr. Gordon Fee also saw the problem that the text of Antioch posed to modern textual theories, and attacked it as well in his response to Hodges and Picking, asserting Chrysostom's text is still closer to the majority text than it is to any text of the 2nd or 3rd century. Like Gordon Fee actually had 2nd and 3rd century texts from the official Greek Orthodox churches to base that statement on. But back to the matter at hand. Don't you see, James, why Hort, who truly understood the issue, had to devise his Lucan recession theory, which would not only explain away the text at Antioch, but would also, in turn, nullify the commonly received text of the apostolic church's testimony by relegating thousands of independent witnesses down to essentially one.
Yeah, so and I'm playing in a double speed, so obviously it's also kind of hard to follow. So I think really like the use of cartoons for this is really helpful. Like I do encourage, I dropped a link in the chat. I do encourage people to go and watch it and try to learn from it, or at least learn this perspective, right? So what he's describing is the idea of, this whole, the idea of the Antiochian text. You can see what I have on the timeline are these dotted lines around these boxes, because there's a whole theory, like the term Antiochian text refers to a hypothetical New Testament textual family associated with Antioch. Over time, the Byzantine text has been labeled in various ways. So people, John Albrecht called it the Asiatic text. The Semler called it the Oriental text, Constantinopolitan text, Syrian by Westcott Hort. The traditional text is what Bergen called it, the Koine text, the common text by von Soden and Merck. And Bengel, Johann Albrecht Bengel, was the first to propose classifying New Testament manuscripts into families in 1725, right? He distinguished two main groups, the Asiatic and the African, right? This is sort of like the divide between like Byzantine and Western, right? Like this is sort of the foundation of these theories. So Semler expanded on Bengel's system, renaming the Asiatic group as Eastern. And that's what you see represented here in the timeline, right? And subdividing the African group into the Alexandrian and Western, attributing by African, we're talking about North Africa, right? Like including Alexandria in Egypt. So attributing the Eastern recension to Lucian of Antioch. So this is the origin of the theory called the Lucianic recension, which is an attempt to explain how we got the Byzantine text, right? We have the majority, it's this conundrum that the majority of our Bible, of our manuscripts that were copied in Byzantium are all of this Byzantine text type, but then when all of our earliest ones that we find conflict with it, right? And so the idea was like, well, we have to explain why it is that it seems so late based on the manuscript witnesses. How did it emerge? And the theory of the Lucianic extension is that Lucian of Antioch rescinded or revised the text and created the sort of church Bible that we ended up with, right? The Byzantine text. Griesbach further developed this classification by refining it into three primary text types: Alexandrian, Western, Byzantine, renaming Semler's Eastern text, what he called the Eastern text, to the Byzantine text, as opposed to just the predecessor, like the forerunner of the Byzantine text. This method became foundational in New Testament textual criticism and influenced subsequent scholars. And then lastly, Streeter in the Four Gospels, a study of origins, proposed that the Antiochian text as a precursor to the Byzantine text type found in most Greek New Testament manuscripts, right? Streeter suggested that the distinct text types included Antiochian, including the Antiochian, evolved regionally, centering around major cities like Antioch, Rome, and Alexandria. Despite these historical classifications, the existence of a distinct Antiochian text remains speculative. Modern scholars like Bruce Metzger recognize regional manuscript variations and acknowledge Lucian's contributions, but the idea of a standalone Antiochian text type remains uncertain due to the lack of conclusive evidence. Thus, while the concept of an Antiochian text has historical roots and theoretical importance, its practical identification as a separate text type within the New Testament manuscript tradition is still debated among scholars, because we're talking about the foundation of the Byzantine text. We're talking about the foundation of the predecessor of whatever text came before the Byzantine tradition that basically, mass produced the majority of textual witnesses that we have today that are all in this red group. Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Great explanation. Yeah. And that explanation, by the way, is like it's embedded in the timeline. So if you go into the Bible timeline, you'll see next to the Antiochian text, this is what I was reading from. Right. I was just these are my notes that I don't even remember all this sources I compiled that from. I have a bibliography, by the way, if you want to check, do your own research and check my sources. Sorry, that was really erratic. My bibliography is here. And I have a lot of my bibliography is on the recommended reading page on Cross Bible. So let's go back to Jonathan's explanation. I would like to play this on regular speed, but I figure, you know what, let's get through it quickly. And I'll stop and provide some explanations where I can, but go watch the video, go subscribe to Jonathan, go support him because he's done some great work here. This is old. He did this 5 years ago, by the way. Why it only has it has 12K views, actually. This is a pretty good one. It should have 120K views, in my opinion, but that's just me.
The natural presumption would be that a majority of extant documents is more likely to represent a majority of ancestral documents at each stage of transmission than vice versa.
But Stewie, no bona fide textual scholar holds to Hort's Lucan conflation theory any longer, except maybe Daniel Wallace, but don't tell I told you.
But you're still holding to Hort's conclusion, James.
Lucan. So the Lucan conflation theory. It's the Lucan conflation theory, the Lucianic recension theory. So again, it's this idea that at some point there was an Eastern text that we don't have. Lucian took it and sort of inserted all of these ecclesiastical, all of everything that we see in the Byzantine text that eventually made its way into the TR that are now considered textual variants, stuff that's been taken out and bracketed and revised, that can be traced back to Lucian. That's the idea. And that's what he's saying is textual scholars don't hold to that position anymore. They don't believe anymore. They don't promote the idea that Lucian corrupted the text, that they believe, and this is the opinion of Peter Gurry and some of these scholars that we're going to talk about. They believe that the Byzantine text actually evolved from a natural process of just sort of copying, cleaning things up, improving style. They don't believe that somebody went in and just tinkered with it and corrupted it. They think it's actually, they still think it's corrupt for the most part, but it doesn't have the reputation that it used to have in the beginning when scholars were labeled the Byzantine text as late and corrupt, and they devised lots of theories as to why that would possibly be, because you have to explain how is it that under the purview of the Greek Orthodox Church was their Bible, how did their Bible become so quote unquote corrupt? They had to have an explanation for it, and that was the explanation that they devised.
Commonly received text of the apostolic churches, even though all his premises have been falsified. Haven't you read Neville Birdsall's published study that has had major implications for this school of thought? Look right here, James. Read along with me, or better yet, eat some cake while I read it to you. Since the publication of Hort's introduction in 1881, it has been assumed in most quarters, as the handbooks reflect, that the text was uniform from the time of John Chrysostom, and that this uniform text, called by a variety of names, and here Byzantine, is to be found in his quotations. However, more recent investigations has questioned both the uniformity of the Byzantine text and its occurrence in Chrysostom citations. Birdsall concluded, in referring to his own work, Hort's premises and the works of Lake, Lagrange.
Yeah, Birdsall is a stark defendant of the Textus Receptus, right? If you want a sort of TR only perspective, Birdsall's work is foundational.
Colwell and Street, that it is evident all presuppositions concerning the Byzantine text or texts, except its inferiority to other types, must be doubted and investigated de novo. Who maintains their conclusions when hypothesis continues to fail? What kind of science is this, James? Don't you see what happened, James? Hort brought in the German rationalism of the late 18th century into the church with his introduction in 1881, thus moving textual science off the ecclesiastical texts for texts of unknown provenance, which has in turn altered the philosophy of New Testament textual criticism for the last 150 years. For while textual criticism has always been a part of church history, as seen in the biblical scholarship of Jerome, Thomas of Harkle, Cardinal Jimenez, and others, they always use ecclesiastical texts. But Hort changed that by accusing the Greek Orthodox of conflating their texts, when in fact it was Hort who actually conflated the text by...
So one thing that is probably worth noting here is the original quotation of Birdsall. I mean, the thing is that this is that part was, Jonathan and I have talked about this. I've been corresponding with Jonathan for a long time. The fuller version of the abridged quotation of Birdsall, he opens his treatise by stating that what was previously assumed about the ostensible uniformity of the Byzantine text, but according to Chrysostom, had been challenged, right? Or vis-a-vis Chrysostom. So as far back as 1956, like the idea that the Byzantine text was really, the Byzantine text is, in my opinion, very uniform. But this is what the Fuller quotation. So he says, this is what I'm reading from Birdsall. However, more recent investigation has questioned both the uniformity of the Byzantine text and its occurrence in Chrysostom citations. Regarding the latter, Jacob Geerlings and Silva Lake published a study of Chrysostom's text of Mark, in which they conclude that his text is, first of all, one peculiar to himself and full of unattested variants, a mixture of neutral, Alexandrian, Western, Caesarean, and other readings. No New Testament manuscript resembling it is known. A similar result is claimed by C.D. Dix for an investigation of Chrysostom's text of Matthew in his homilies on Matthew. The statistics of the results are provided, but the actual readings are not given. As a terminus ad quem, the latest possible date, for the determination of the dominance of the Byzantine text, Chrysostom's homilies will no longer serve. And although the Washington Codex Washingtonianus of the Gospels and the Purple Codices show us a text from the 5th and 6th centuries, which is at least ancestral to the dominant medieval text type, the evidence of Chrysostom's text now demonstrates that such a text was not universally dominant in the 4th century. Since this was discovered, scholars have not agreed on the date of the appearance of the Byzantine text, and the Lakes put it as late as the 9th century. Yet it is not only the dating of this text, but also its uniformity, which has been questioned. So I just wanted to clarify that is that's the original quote.
Creating his textual Frankenstein, basically comprised of Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, and Codes Beza, thereby introducing into the church a text that cannot be shown to have ever been used in any apostolic church prior to 1881. This was the break that interfered with the time-space continuum for the text of the New Testament, James. It's all becoming perfectly clear, James. There was never any standardized text within the Greek Orthodox churches until the publication of its patriarchal text in 1904, which means that the overwhelming proportion of variants common to the great mass of cursive manuscripts of the New Testament are basically independent witnesses, not based on a uniform text that became popular at Antioch in 385, or collusion by the great Orthodox churches.
No collusion, James. No collusion.
When this school of thought came to the realization that all its premises had been falsified, they should have reconsidered the status of the commonly received Greek, Latin, and Aramaic ecclesiastical texts, which should have led them back to Hort's natural presumption. But instead, modern text critical theorists have continued mutating Hort's textual monstrosity to the tune of 28 editions of Nessel-Allen. And things are going to get a whole lot worse, James. Supposedly, they've come out with some new machine, their take on AI.
Are you talking about the CBGM?
Precisely, James. Now off to the future.
Now we're getting into it.
Welcome to Monster, home to the site of the Nestle-Allen Greek New Testament text and the CBGM. Right this way, my friends. Master, your guests have arrived.
Thank you, Igor, for showing them in.
Yes, Master.
Good evening, Stewie. James, what do I have the pleasure of this visit?
Pleasure is all mine, Dr. Gurry. Thanks for agreeing to meet with us on short notice. James, close your mouth. You're groveling. It's embarrassing.
How can I be of assistance, Stewie?
Well, Dr. Curry, James and I have been on our fact-finding mission, and we're trying to understand a little more about the CBGM. So, what exactly is the CBGM?
Answering that, Stewie, will require everyone to get more acquainted with my published titles on the issue. But
hold that thought, Dr. Gurry. Just a moment. Rupert, read through the chapters while we momentarily pause for a quick commercial break.
Attention New Testament textual maniacs. Dr. Peter Gurry and Tommy Wasserman's book titled A New Approach to Textual Criticism is now available. Explore the first full-length, accessible introduction to the Coherence-Based Genealogical Method, which is now being used to establish the text of the Nessel-Allen in the UBS Greek New Testament. And now, while the presses are hot.
As you were saying, Dr. Gurry, before I rudely interrupted.
In a relatively short sentence, the CBGM is a method that uses a set of computer tools based in a new way of relating manuscript texts that is designed to help us understand the origin and history of the New Testament text.
Interesting, Dr. Gurry. Since programming of this kind relies heavily on algorithms, which are based on a set of assumptions, those assumptions would naturally drive the results. I'd be interested in hearing your views on the general consensus of scholars today on the Lucan recension theory.
There wasn't one. Klaus Wachtel demonstrated this for the Catholic epistles in his 1993 dissertation, and he has argued the same for Paul and the Gospels. I don't know any living textual critic who thinks Lucian made a recension of the New Testament text.
James, it's interesting that Bergen was right all along on this point, yet you don't follow his conclusion on the text. Strange. What do you have there, Rupert? Oh, I see. Excellent observation, Rupert. I'll be sure to let James know.
Let me know? What?
Well, Rupert has brought it to my attention that prior to the evolution of the CBGM, it appears modern text critics employed a different theory of relating manuscript text together to understand the origin and history of the text. Apparently, for the last 2 centuries, New Testament scholars used a concept known as text types, which categorize the text into Alexandrian, Western, Byzantine, or Caesarean type. If one reads Bruce Metzger's well-known textual commentary that accompanies the UBS, the notion of text types is absolutely essential to his explanation of the history of the New Testament text, and with it, to the practice of textual criticism itself. I wonder how this jives with the CBGM. Let me ask Dr. Gurry. Dr. Gurry, How would the CBGM discern a type text if the text was Alexandrian or Western?
First, text types are particular to certain parts of the New Testament, but for Acts and the Catholic letters, the CBGM does not offer strong support for an Alexandrian or Western text type as traditionally conceived. The reason is the boundaries of these supposed text types turn out to be too porous in light of the complete collations used in the CBGM. It is one of the most significant conclusions drawn from use of the CBGM that text types are an unhelpful category for describing the history of the text, and therefore are unhelpful for making textual decisions.
Unhelpful for making textual decisions, James? Right. Yes. Well, that sort of changes everything, especially since modern text critics' understanding of text types was central to reclassifying the Greek, Latin, and Aramaic ecclesiastical text as secondary in origin. Yet you're still holding on to the conclusion, James, as if it was spoken ex cathedra by the Pope. Is this rich? In other words, text types has been a phony bologna sandwich from the start, James, and modern text critics have been chewing on the sandwich for the last 200 years. Goodness. Not you too, James. Put down the phony bologna sandwich. No, don't drink the Kool-Aid too. Now, come on, James. I know all your textual theories are...
Yeah, so this assumes, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, James White was supporting the notion of text types. He's changed. I mean, James White is pretty much, as far as I can tell from recent review of his content, he's fully behind the CBGM. I was going to pull up a clip. You know, he's recently begun pushing back on some of Dan McClellan's content, and I think Dan McClellan mentioned something about early manuscripts, and James White was like attacking him. I don't know, it didn't seem like James White did a whole lot of research, but it was interesting that his attack against Dan McClellan was to insinuate that Dan McClellan isn't aware of modern, coherence-based genealogical method and the ECM, like that he was somehow ignorant about that. So I get the impression that James White is aligned on modern scholarship. Real quick, so Ali said that she found what Marcion has for Luke 23, 33, 34, and he has, and after coming to the place called Skull Place, they crucified him and divided his garments, and the sun was darkened. Was much added, or did he remove? I think Stephen should add Marcion's New Testament as a valuable resource for comparison. Probably not. I don't know where I could get a copy of it in any way, but I have to license most of these Bibles that aren't in the public domain, and it takes a lot of effort to add a new Bible from the XML data, and I have to pay people to do that. So I don't know. I get a lot of questions about, like, what are you going to add? Commentaries? I think we got a question earlier. Am I going to add commentaries? Am I going to add the apocryphal gospels? And like, there's only so much time in the day. So obviously, if somebody wants to sponsor the cost of adding some obscure resource, I would be happy to. But for right now, my sights are set on adding, valuable Bibles. Like, I want to add the NRSV. I want to add the NET. We're working diligently on that. If I get to the point where I'm sitting on thousands of Bibles and I'm like, what else can we add? Yeah, maybe we'll add a bunch of other non-biblical resources. But for now, I got my hands full with the Bible. Sorry. Talk to Marcus Vincent. So I think the quote, what you're saying is that he didn't say, forgive them, Father, but for they know that not what they do. So he supports the omission of that verse. So I think at 2x speed, I mean, look, even if you're watching Jonathan's cartoon not at 2x speed, I think you get the general. So here, what he has strapped to this table is this Frankenstein's monster that says NA29, right? And this is what we were sort of illustrating with the timeline of the Bible, right? Like, so a lot of this terminology just rushes by you. So we're back to this notice, right? So what he's pointing out is that, this notice right here. So the New Testament textual critics who adhere to the coherence-based genealogical method have largely abandoned the traditional categorization of manuscripts into text types. They don't really use these categories anymore, except for Byzantine. So they consider Byzantine to be like a coherent, more or less like, cohesive text type. But Western Alexandrian Byzantine, it's not like, okay, the accusation here, and like this is the angle of attack that Sheffield is taking, right? He's saying that, look, for 200 years, scholarship was basically, like, modern scholarship was built on what you see here in the timeline. It is essential to understanding the text critical literature of the last couple of centuries, especially like the foundational stuff by the Alans and by Bruce Metzger. If you don't understand how these text types were assigned to manuscripts and divided and treated and dated, you're not going to understand any of that text critical literature, right? So you need to understand it, which is why I have put together this Bible timeline, because when I was studying that stuff, I was simultaneously putting together a visual representation to help me. I was putting together a visual representation to help me understand how this was all, just to visualize what I was learning, right? And so what Jonathan is saying is that, look, the last 200 years, all of the scholarship has been built on this foundational principle of like these text types that you can divide, you can group together into these neat families, all these manuscripts, and that because this family of what has been called neutral text or Alexandrian text, because these manuscripts are in this family, because this family has the earliest witnesses, this is the most reliable. There's like a lot of scholarship has gone in to building this foundation. And so if this foundation is now crumbling and the new school, so he has strapped in there is the NA29, right? The NA29 is being fed by the ECM, right? And he's saying that, you know, in Jonathan's illustration, that this is coming from Westcott, Hort, and Tischendorf, and, you know, Weiss and von Soden, and this is basically coming from this is the foundation that's built upon Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, right? That's the foundation. Everything else is being layered on top of it from the assumption that those are like the earliest and most reliable witnesses. But ironically, what we're going to discuss is that the ECM is actually bringing back into it some of these Byzantine readings, right? Like they are reevaluating the Byzantine text's value with respect to reconstructing the text. So back to what back to the cart. Okay, so Greg Macer, timeline poster. Thank you, Greg. Make sure you jump into the Discord if you're not there already, and DM me to claim your prize. All right. So you can make sure you get me your address.
With the provenance, but they taste so good. Well, that explains all the lacuna in the manuscripts. Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, my precious!
Snap out of it, James. These texts are fool's gold.
But Stewie, these texts were used by the churches.
Excuse me, James, but there is a problem with the provenance of these texts. The origins of both Sinaiticus and Vaticanus remain elusive, despite generations of scholarly debate seeking to clarify and resolve the problem.
Don't you see, James? While Sinaiticus and Vaticanus may well be 4th century Greek texts, we don't know where they come from, according to Dr. Wasserman. Yet, in the 4th century, we can establish the provenance of 2 official texts read publicly at apostolic churches in Antioch, Rome, and North Africa that we can objectively compare them to.
Excuse me? How do you read so many books?
I don't. I listen.
What do you mean you listen?
Jeez.
Well, as you can see, James, the Greek text preached on from Antioch by Chrysostom in 385, from the oldest surviving Greek church, going back to the Apostles' witnesses against your text, James. And Antioch is not your only problem. Incidentally, when we look west in the 4th century, it leads us to Jerome's Vulgate.
But that's the Latin.
Except Jerome tells us in his prologue to the Gospels that his Latin translation was revised in comparison with only old Greek manuscripts, which makes the Vulgate another 4th century or earlier Greek witness against your texts. Furthermore, Augustine's letter to Jerome corroborates the Vulgate as a credible witness to the Greek scriptures when he affirms, "We are in no small measure thankful to God for the work in which you have translated the Gospels from the original Greek, because in almost every passage we have found nothing to object to when we compared it with the Greek scriptures." Therefore, James, the hypothesis for these oldest and best manuscripts is falsified. Yet the CBGM machine is being fueled primarily by these texts of unknown provenance as the basis for its editions. So why would the Nestle Allen in the US continue to maintain their conclusions on the ecclesiastical texts, even though all its premises have been falsified? Is it because when you move off these mixed texts and have to resolve the differences between the Vulgate, the Byzantium, and Peshitta, it leads us back to the TR?
That is heresy, Stewie.
Oh, but there's more, James. Given that the TR is in the public domain, it means it couldn't be copyrighted. And without the mixed texts, there's no need for new modern translations, which would cripple the Nestle Allen and UBS Bible publishing industry. Jobs would be lost, and you wouldn't be considered experts any longer.
So you can see the layering on of assumptions here in this attack against the critical text, right? And so now it's also he's bringing the finances into it and the copyright issues into it, and for me it's a bit of a stretch. It's a little too far, but again, I think it's a very good, at least, like, even though I don't necessarily agree with some of the premises and the conclusion, it's a really educational video. Like, great job. I understand why James White is so offended by it. But the idea is basically, yeah, if you are reinventing the wheel here and you're sort of wiping the slate clean and starting from scratch, that like somehow, it's unreliable. Like basically he's saying that the last 200 years was based on this foundation. You've destroyed that foundation. You're building it up from scratch using similar text critical methods. Why don't we just go back to our roots and just rely on the Bible that we've had, since Erasmus. And he's also saying that like the convergence of, so he said that if you that you can take the Latin Vulgate or the sort of Western text tradition that they used to be called Western, if you can take these sort of this textual tradition and merge it with this textual tradition that you back into the TR, I don't know. I'd have to see how that the mechanics of how that would actually work. And it's also important to point out that like Jerome's Vulgate we don't have. So yes, Jerome's Vulgate was improving upon the Old Latin version, going back to some Greek texts that we don't have, right? We don't know if really like we don't have visibility. We don't have Jerome's actual Vulgate, and we don't have visibility into what Greek the Vulgate was actually translated from, because all we have are later witnesses to the Vulgate, like Sengellensis and Fuldensis and Amiatinus and later Vulgate witnesses that go all the way. So like we have Old Latin witnesses. We have lots of sort of copies of the Vulgate that post-date Jerome, and they all sort of, they're all in this kind of Western flavor if you're still sort of on board with the Western text. And there is like the overlap with like Syriac Sinaiticus and some of the Syriac versions, right? The Peshitta. So we do have overlapping tradition, but it's not as easily reconstructed as I think is that Jonathan's presenting here. But I'd be interested in discussing more closely with Jonathan on the channel at some point if he's willing to come on to sort of take a look at the timeline from his perspective and see where he's coming from, because it's like you can disagree, you can talk with people that you disagree with, and I'd just be interested to see like, well, what is his perspective on what's going on in the modern Bible publishing industry. Clearly he thinks it's all like corrupt, right? Like, I mean, this was a pretty scathing review of the modern Bible. So thank you. So Jonathan would love to come on. So maybe I can have him join the live stream one of these weekends, and I can start having more and more guests. So we're 2 hours into this. We haven't really talked a whole lot about the CBGM. What I wanted to do was show you first Jonathan's presentation of it, and then let's get into what I was going to present, which is my own sort of distillation, hold on a second, of the history here. So we have Erasmus, right? We have his Novum Instrumentum Omni in 1516, and the Novum Testamentum that was basically the foundation of the TR, right? We always have to start with Erasmus. Everything goes back to him. So from Erasmus and the Complutensian and Polyglot, I don't think there's a way I don't want a slideshow. Okay, well, let's do it as long as you guys can see this. Okay, yeah, let's do a slideshow. All right, so we have the Complutensian and Polyglot around the same time as Erasmus. This is the version that Erasmus was competing with. And you can see at this time, we got like the Hebrew and the Greek and the Latin, and like everything is like, we're already sort of swimming in different versions, right? And now in comes the critical text and the CBGM. Okay, so this was put together. This is on the Evangelical Textual Criticism blog by Peter Gurry. You can see here that as we saw on the timeline, the minuscules, and the lectionaries that are produced from the 9th century, exploding in the 11th, 12th, 13th century, the 14th century, the heyday of Byzantium, right? They are just producing crazy 443 minuscules from the 11th century, 591 from the 12th century, and 13th century, right? These are dwarfing the numbers of the earliest papyrus and majuscule manuscripts that we have from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century, right? You can see the papyrus are earlier, We have more papyrus the earlier we are, and then we get into the majuscules that are getting a bit more voluminous, like 51 majuscules from the 5th century, 6th century, 7th century, and then the explosion of minuscules and lectionaries, and then the downtrend in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries after Byzantium falls, right? So that's when all the Bibles flow into the West. And Constantine von Tischendorf is the person who discovers the Codex Sinaiticus and sort of starts the new trend of sort of favoring Alexandrian manuscripts. We have key manuscripts in the 5th century, Ephraemi Rescriptus, right? This is a palimpsest. You can see it's text written over other text. Codex Vaticanus, Codex Alexandrinus. These are the pillars of modern scholarship. And of course, Westcott and Hort. These were Anglicans. These were, Christian men. They were not Satan worshipers. I know that there are lots of people like to say that these were people that were, I think, doing their best to reconstruct the Bible. And then we have Nestle's 1923 Greek New Testament that started this trend of reconstructing the text that you see above with a minimal apparatus at the bottom that is mostly deferring to Westcott Hort, represented by the letter H, Weymouth's resultant New Testament represented by the letter R, Weiss's New Testament represented by W, and Tischendorf represented by T. So when you're looking at the textual apparatus and you see that this is the beginning of Mark, we were talking about this last week, right? Architu Evangeliui Isu Christu, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Eutu Theou, right? Eutheu, the Son of God. Eutheu, Son of God, is not in the body of the text. So Nestle is probably following, these sources like Westcott Hort. He takes that out. The Son of God is not there in Mark 1. And as we talked about last week, it's coming back in. But at the beginning, it was taken out, relegated to the textual apparatus, and citing H, R, and W, right? So it's citing Westcott Hort, Weymouth, and Bernard Weiss, right? And you can see that Tischendorf is cited there with Christou Kathos. So this is how the apparatus works, right? It's printing the body of the text of what the scholar is reconstructing as what he thinks is most original. And in the footnotes, he's putting the reasoning, the textual variant, what sources are supporting the textual variant that's been chosen for the body of the text, and what are the alternative textual variants. Nestle's 1927 edition, getting bigger, right? The apparatus is growing, right? Now you're citing Codex Sinaiticus directly, Codex Vaticanus, Codex Beze. We were talking Codex Beze, Washingtonianus, Corodethi, with all of these symbols, right? So you have to kind of understand, these symbols are for brevity. And here, this is what they represent, right? These are the copies that the textual critics are deferring to, again, to support. This is just the image from Mark chapter 1, just for comparison, right? This is the Nestle Aland Committee in 1990, right? You got Kurt Aland, you have Bruce Metzger, right? These are the OGs, right? And you can see that they're not working with computers; they're working with Bibles, right? They got a table full of Bibles, and this is the new committee. They're working here in Athens in 2016. You can see Dr. Florian Voss over there from the German Bible Society. Shout out to Dr. Voss. We recently got a new German Bible from the German Bible Society. We have a license now, so they're an official partner. So we're working on getting that released. But this is the new. You can see now they have computers in front of them, and now they are cranking out the Nestle Aland 29, right? Like they're working on it. And this is the 20. So you can see the Nestle Aland 28. The UBS 5, like this is the critical text, and you get the Septuagint there at the bottom. And this is the difference, right? The UBS 5 has a simplified textual apparatus. It's used by translators. Over on the left, you have the Nestle Aland 28, which is more of a scholarly edition that has a much more extensive textual apparatus that's less geared towards translators. So there is an agreement among the Bible societies that all future Bibles are going to be translated from UBS 5 and eventually from UBS 6 or NA 29. That's coming. That's in the pipeline. So the textual variant that I was going to sort of start explaining, the sort of this is a typical Byzantine textual variant, right? Doxa and ipsistis and ipsistis Theo, so glory to God in the highest, ke epihis irini and anthropis evdokias, versus an anthropis evdokia. So what that means in plain English, glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace among people with whom he is pleased, or goodwill. So the reason why this is a really, really good illustrative textual variant to explain, and let me just make sure everything is good. Okay, so yeah, no comments. The reason why this is a good textual variant, you can see the genitive case, the genitive case, which is the most difficult reading, right? The most difficult reading is considered en anthropis evdokias. So en anthropis evdokias means among men of goodwill. Evdokia is goodwill. When you tack the sigma onto it and you put it in the genitive case, it means that these are men who belong to the category of having goodwill, or in other words, having favor, evdokia, having God's favor. So basically, if you're in this group, it excludes basically everybody else, right? Like glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to people who God favors. If God doesn't favor you, you don't get peace. That's the sort of implication of that sigma. If you have the sigma there, it is the genitive case of evdokia. Whereas evdokia without the sigma is what is favored in the Byzantine text, right? It is what, like, somebody who takes the position of like Jonathan McClatchy, you would say, no, this has always been evdokia, right? It's the nominative. It means that this goodwill is to all men. It is universalist, right? Like that's the reading here. And we have our Christmas song, like peace on earth and goodwill towards men, is built on this. So by tacking on the sigma, in their opinion, the sigma was tacked on, you're basically taking this goodwill that's originally available to everyone, and you're like making it, no, this is only to Christians, basically. Like this is an exclusive reading. So that's considered the most difficult reading, because it's hard to imagine why a scribe would look at a universalist phrase like en anthropis evdokias and hack off the evdokia, whether they would see evdokia, goodwill towards all men, and tack a sigma on there to make it and goodwill to the people who are of good, of God's favor, right? It's considered a difficult reading. They can't, textual critics haven't really been able to explain why that would be added. It's much easier to explain why it would be removed, because sigmas get cut off, right? Like if you don't notice the sigma, you might just assume that it's evdokia, even though originally the authorial, like the autograph, would have had the sigma. So it's supported by the oldest representatives of the Alexandrian and Western group of witnesses. Again, this is Metzger, right? So he's talking in terms of text types. The rise of the nominative reading can be explained either as an amelioration of the sense or as a paleographic oversight. At the end of a line, evdokias with the sigma would differ from evdokia only by the presence of the smallest possible lunar sigma, little more than a point for which it might have been taken. Thus, evdokia with a tiny little sigma, right? So you can see how it would be easy to explain why that sigma would disappear. Harder to explain why someone would tack it on, right? And the note here, Luke 2:7-24 is a hypothetical reconstruction, right? Like no papyri survive for this particular section. And here's some additional, sort of explanation. This is what the UBS 5 textual apparatus looks like versus the NA28 for en anthropis evdokia. So it's not that when you're reading the critical text, you can see all of the different varieties. You can see that there's the A rating for en anthropis evdokias with the sigma. They believe the sigma is basically the new version, right? Where is en anthropis evdokia, no sigma, it's pretty well represented, right? That's the majority reading. Scholars mostly reject the majority reading now. In a new approach to textual criticism by Wasserman and Gurry, the CBGM is explained, and I'm condensing a lot of this. So obviously you should be just go and get the book, like read the book if you're really interested in this topic. The CBGM uses a set of computer tools, and it's based in a new way of relating manuscript texts that is designed. The CBGM is designed to help us understand the origin and history of the New Testament text. So in a nutshell, those are the three top points, right? This is what the CBGM is meant to accomplish. It makes a consistent distinction between manuscripts as physical artifacts and the text these artifacts contain. We'll get into that. So the CBGM is only intent on relating texts, not manuscripts. The term witness, a textual witness, is often used in the context of the CBGM to refer to the text of a manuscript in distinction from the manuscript itself. So this is the key shift, right? That they're no longer, whereas foundational textual criticism, right, of the 19th, 20th century, they're really saying like, okay, this manuscript from the 3rd century is sort of an overall representative of a text type, of a family of texts, and that therefore, like from cover to cover, we could just assume that if we find it in that manuscript, that it belongs to that text type, that it belongs to that family. And let me just make sure everybody following. Okay, nobody's commenting. How many people we got? We got 15 people. So let's continue. So basically, what you see in the timeline of the Bible is an emphasis on manuscripts. It's an emphasis on families, text types, categorization. I have it color coded. That's my own color coding system. That is representing the way that scholars used to view the landscape, right? Now the CBGM is doing this differently. So it's focusing on the readings themselves and not necessarily, they consider the manuscript as part of the overall puzzle, but there's less emphasis on the manuscript itself. And here it is. So you can see this is the Editio Critica Maior, right? A huge textual apparatus that is basically meant to be all-inclusive. What you saw in the NA28 and in the UBS5 is not all-inclusive, right? It is a selection. So the new approach to textual criticism, the textual changes between the ECM and the NA28, soon to be NA29, they have made 33 changes in the Gospel of Mark. They have made 34 changes in the Catholic letters. 32 use brackets versus 43 are that diamond character, right? To represent that there's a textual variant, like a little flag. In Acts, they have made 52 changes. And this is because the text of Acts is particularly complicated. 78 uses of brackets versus 155 diamonds, right? And 84 changes in the text of Revelation. And one important point that Peter Gorey makes here is that they have slightly more uncertainty about the text overall. The newest editions of the Nestle Aland and UBS text have dropped the use of square brackets in the Catholic letters in favor of the diamond, right, placed in the text, the textual apparatus, marking where the ECM editors formally refrain from a rating, right? They're not like the previous practice was to say, okay, we're going to choose a rating, or we're going to choose a reading and give it a rating, give it a letter score like A. That means like the committee unanimously agrees that that's the best reading. If there's some difference of opinions in the committee, they might mark it a B. If there's some real doubt and there's some objections, maybe they mark it a C, right? So they refrain from giving it a formal rating as to which reading is preferred. There has been an increase in both the number of places marked as uncertain and an increase in the level of uncertainty being marked. So basically, the new method of textual criticism using the CBGM that's resulting in the ECM text, they're narrowing in on what they believe is the reconstruction of the text. And in general, they have less confidence overall about their reconstruction, right? Before the CBGM, by the time you got to the Nestle Aland, 28th edition, the committee was pretty confident that, like, the differences between, like, and this is the thing, like Jonathan Sheffield is saying, like, oh, there's 28 editions, and that for some, in his opinion or in his view, having 28 new editions of the New Testament is a problem. It's like, oh, okay, this is like, they can't get it straight. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that from edition to edition, the changes are so few that really what they're doing, for the most part, these updated Bibles, they're updating the apparatus. They're discovering new manuscripts, they're indexing new manuscripts, and they're including those manuscripts in the apparatus to say these are witnesses that either corroborate the reading that we have up there, or they're witnesses to the alternate reading. The text of the critical text is not really, even though like I've been being sensational about the fact that the Bible's being updated and the future of the Bible is going to change. We're going to go over some of those textual variants, but for the most part, today's Nestle Aland 28 is very consistent with like the early 20th century Nestle's original text, right? Because they are very much based on Vaticanus and Sinaiticus. So the textual variants between different editions of the Nestle Aland text are not really major. They're not that much to write home about. The editors of the CBGM have replaced the relationships and value of the text types with relationships and value of individual witnesses, right? So the editors still recognize the Byzantine text as distinct, as a distinct text form in its own right, regarding it as the result of a long process. So that whole red chain, they said this is a long process. It wasn't, in other words, it should be given more weight than in the past. In other words, what he's saying, and I have some ellipses here because I was trying to condense it, but what they're saying is nobody believes that the Byzantine text is the result of like a short-term recension by Lucian. That there was some dude sat down and just like rewrote the Bible, and then after that they had a uniform text. No, they believe that yes, the Byzantine text is a sort of evolved form of the text. It's a standardized form of the text. It's a text that's been carefully copied and sort of improved over time. You know, the Greek grammar has been smoothed out. The easier readings have been favored as opposed to the difficult readings that you find in the critical text. But that's what he means by the result of a long process. In the Catholic letters, 10 out of 12 changes that they have made are in favor of the Byzantine text. So they are going back to the Byzantine text as opposed to the last 200 years where they poo-pooed the Byzantine text. Now it's like, okay, the Byzantine text is back in vogue, at least for 10 of the 12 changes in the Catholic letters. In other words, they believe now that the Byzantine text is a better representative of what would be a more original version of the Catholic letters than Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus, right? Like that's pretty major. In Acts 36 of the 52 changes that they've made in Acts are in favor of the Byzantine text again. So if you're on team Byzantine text or ecclesiastical text, you're like clapping right now. You're like, yes, we got him, right? We're getting our text back. Maybe 50 years from now, it'll just totally revert. The CBGM enhanced by AI will just start spitting out, new Textus Receptuses. Who knows? 105 out of the 155 passages where the Byzantine readings are deemed to be of equal value to a variant in the NA 28. So again, favoring Byzantine readings. 20 of the 155 passages where the Byzantine readings side with variant A. So variant A would be the variant that they put in the body of the text, like it's matching the Byzantine text. Sorry, got a typo there. The ECM editors prefer to speak about a Western cluster of variants rather than witnesses. And this goes back to the whole idea of like, are they really scrapping the idea of text types, right? I mean, somebody tagged Peter Gurry on the recent video by Useful Charts that was, featuring the timeline of the Bible and said, hey, look, this guy's teaching traditional text types, or the Matt Baker was teaching traditional text types through my timeline. And Peter Gurry posted an emoji that like one of those facepalm emoji or like peeking through his fingers emojis, right? Like I could tell, like, I'm not going to make friends with Peter Gurry, even though I have a lot of respect for him. He's probably going to be like, how dare you, the text types. But you can see here, like they still talk about Western cluster of like Western is still a thing. They just don't associate a manuscript in and of itself like Codex Bezae. Like they wouldn't say that the codex itself is rather than witnesses. So they talk about the Western cluster of variants. So Western is still a thing, but they talk about it in terms of the variants and not the manuscript itself, right? A stratum of the New Testament textual transmission that requires other methods than the CBGM to further explore, because one, the Greek witnesses attesting to the Western readings lack coherence. We're going to talk about what coherence is, right? And two, these readings are attested partly by versional witnesses, right? So these are, okay, so let me see, just check in the chat, making sure everybody's good. Oh, so sorry, I think I skipped. Okay, versional witnesses. Okay, the CBGM's new goal is to reconstruct not the original text, but the Ausgangstext, right? Then that's a term that's coined by Gerd Mink. So the reconstructed form of the text from which the manuscript tradition started, right? So this is a key distinction. It's a little fuzzy. The authorial text, the redactor's text, or the archetype of the tradition as preserved. The initial text may refer to the author's text, right? Like exactly what came out of Mark's pen or Luke's pen or Paul's pen or his scribe's pen or his amanuensis pen, or something later, right? Like there could be like a sort of a public, like an initial first draft, and maybe there was like a published version that was like slightly tweaked, right? That we don't know. They can't push back any further than that because our witnesses are kind of late, right? That's because it is the text from which the manuscript tradition as we know it started. We cannot simply assume whether the text from which our extant tradition developed, the initial text, is the author's text or something further removed from it. Now, if you really back Peter Gurry into a corner, he's going to say like, well, but we believe that this Ausgangstext that began the textual tradition is a faithful representation of the autograph. We don't think that, we're not hypothesizing like some, like maybe like, I don't know, Bart Ehrman might take a more extreme position and say like between the autograph and the first copies, we have no idea what happened. There's just like this dark age, right? And then the text could have been severely altered and we would have no way of knowing. Peter Gurry doesn't take that position. Most textual critics don't think that people were monkeying around with the text to the extent of, yes, it is true that the earliest copies have the most variety between them, but we haven't yet unearthed evidence that there was like an early version of the Bible that was drastically different from the one that we've been able to reconstruct. So most textual variants are relatively minor, with some exceptions. So there's two different types of coherence in the coherence-based genealogical method. Again, this is coherence-based. So coherence is the basis of this method. So you have to understand what coherence is, right? There's pre-genealogical coherence, quantitative analysis, right? And we're going to look at some visualization of this. How closely are two witnesses related? So the percentage of agreement between the texts of any two witnesses or any two variants from manuscripts, right? Clusters, at all places of variation. So wherever they're different, not counting the places of textual agreement. So when you hold two texts up to each other and they're reading they're verbatim, they match, and everything's good. And then all of a sudden you have a point of disagreement. The point where they mismatch, either in word order or wording or whatever, that's where you start counting, right? You don't count all of the lines where they're the same. You count the differences. Manuscript A and manuscript B disagree in 20 out of 100 places where we have textual variation, resulting in 80% pre-genealogical coherence. And that's pretty much like the average, right? Like if you take any two manuscripts on that timeline and you compare them, I believe the average is about 80%, right? That like of sort of textual consistency among our entire manuscript tradition, of just a testament to how well the New Testament has been preserved, right? There's still 20% variance, but 80% is pretty good. The direction for an ancient work that's been copied for 2,000 years, the direction of the relationship, the editor's own decisions made at each place of variation. It is not a relationship between manuscripts, but it's between texts conveyed in them, right? The computer, their computer system that they've built, the database, never makes the decision for the user. And this is very important because I think the way it was sort of illustrated in Jonathan's video was that you're like, it's just this sort of box, right? Like it's just like, oh, the computer is like AI is basically making the new version of the Bible. There is an AI critical Bible. I've played around with it. But that's not what the CBGM is, right? The computer isn't making the decision for the user as to which textual variant to favor, but it's giving the user tools, and we're going to look at these tools of how the textual critic, the human textual critic should evaluate the manuscripts. The extent to which they incorporate AI into the process moving forward, I don't know. It's probably a sensitive subject. I'm not privy to how AI is going to play into this. So we have three types of stemmata. So stemma, right? A stemma is a crown in Greek, like stemmata is the plural. What they're referring to is like taxonomy. There's like a genealogy of manuscripts, like you see on the timeline of the Bible. So the timeline of the Bible is a kind of stemmata, right? They're individual variants. So what we have, the stemmata that we have in the timeline of the Bible are like the manuscript families, but what the CBGM computer system produces are stemmata for variants, which we're going to look at. Two variants connected at a single place or location, the basis of genealogical coherence, right? So what they're doing is they're mapping visually. It's similar to my timeline, right? They're mapping visually how textual variants descend, like the family tree of textual variants at a particular place of agreement or disagreement between witnesses, right? So for example, so yeah, you sent a friend request. So thank you let me just point out the so Greg. So thank you, Greg. I believe you we will be in touch regarding your timeline that I will ship to you. So congratulations on winning a free timeline. So James 2:23 in the NIV reads, and the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. And he was called God's friend, philos, or servant, doulos. So friend is the NIV reading. Doulos, servant, is a textual variant. We don't know what James originally wrote. He could have written either one. And what they're showing you is basically that the substemma, the whole texts or witnesses to this reading, relating any one witness to its ancestor, determining the minimal number of ancestors for a given witness in a given book or corpus, allowing the construction of global stemma. So the local stemma is basically tracing the origins, like, okay, you have parent texts, these manuscripts, 617, 424, 468, that hypothetically, they have that same reading, right? So they're going to feature philos as opposed to featuring doulos. And the manuscript that you're reading that has that philos reading has these parents that feed into it. That's the idea of the substemma, right? Whereas the global stemma, the whole texts or witnesses, right? Like in terms of actual, this is more like the timeline of the Bible, right? Like your manuscripts. The final stemma, a combination of all the available substemmata that shows us the overall results of the editor's own decisions in all the local stemmata, right? So when they put together all of their local stemmata and they decide, okay, this variant comes from this manuscript and this variant comes from this manuscript, they're looking at individual manuscripts, they're zoomed in, and they reconstruct how where they think that the manuscripts, that those readings descended from genealogically. When you zoom out, you end up with the global stemmata, right? Where you have this big, huge family tree similar to the timeline of the Bible, but these are for specific readings, right? Now, the example in Mark 1:1, the beginning of the news about Jesus, the Messiah, right? The Son of God, the Christ. Architu Evangeliu Isu Christu, tu theou, or just theou, right? Without the articles. Architu Evangeliu Isu Christu, without that, the addition, right? Many witnesses of the shorter reading that just say the beginning of Jesus Christ, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, have no close relatives with the same reading. Without the benefit of pre-genealogical coherence, in other words, that like 80% agreement of the witnesses, scholars have pointed to the unlikelihood of an accidental omission in the opening words of a work, right? We don't think it's very likely that they just accidentally like drop, the very first words of the text have an accidental omission. In this case, involving nomina sacra. In other words, Isu Christu eu theou would have been abbreviated in manuscripts with nomina sacra, with the sacred abbreviations iota, chi, epsilon, theta, right? Like I, x, y, theta, right? Like you would just condense it like that. And so here is where they think the confusion originates, right? The pre-genealogical coherence for each reading suggests that we should prefer the longer reading as the initial text of Mark's gospel. So remember, when we were looking back at Nestle, the early editions of the critical text in the early 20th century, they were chopping that off. They were chopping off the Son of God at the beginning of Mark 1:1. We talked about this last week. It's coming back with vengeance. right? Textual critics are bringing it back. So now we get to a few textual variants, and I think I'll just stick with it. I was going to show all this in Cross Bible. Let me pull this up in Cross Bible after I go over it here, because I did put these into my notes, so I want to make sure I feature that. But the NASB we have for 2 Peter 3:10. It's marking here with an asterisk, a reading that it says is not supported by the vast majority of ancient manuscripts, the majority text, right? And is considered a conjecture by many scholars due to the lack of textual evidence, right? So basically they're theorizing that originally the negation not was there, right? So they're saying, but the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the elements will be destroyed with intense heat, and the earth and its works will be discovered, melting. And we have bracketed readings for all of these. This is a little sloppy, but I've tried to throw in all these variants, right? So it's either they will be discovered, evrethysete, they will be discovered, melting, liomena, or will be discovered in the plural. Some manuscripts have evrethysonde, so the plural, versus aphanisthysete, will be destroyed or removed, will be burned up, katakaisete, right? Or will be burned up in the plural, katakaisonde, right? So scribes couldn't really reconcile these, right? Like this one got a little mucked up in the transmission process. Now, the conjecture, they're using the term conjecture. So conjecture in textual criticism means that basically they have all these witnesses that say that the earth and its works will be discovered. And then all of these textual variants that say, well, it will be discovered melting, or it will, be discovered, it will, or they will be discovered, or they will be destroyed, right? What they think it probably originally said, and they're just guessing, and that's what they mean by conjecture, right? They think it said, they think that there was originally a not there, the and that it somehow got dropped off. And that reading is not supported by the vast majority of ancient manuscripts. It's a conjecture, right? Many scholars that, it's just, there's not evidence for it. And I think, yeah. So let's stop the slideshow for a second. And I just want to make sure that I'm taking advantage of the resource that, so 2 Peter 3:10. So let's look up 2 Peter 3:10, just for good measure. Let's get 2 Peter 3. And I'm going to pull it up. All right. So y'all see 2 Peter 3:10. Boom. All right. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire. So you can see what we get on the surface here in the English translation. We're saying the elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare, right? And that's going to be consistent, like with the let's look at the NASB. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the elements will be destroyed with intense heat. So again, the elements will be destroyed by fire. The elements will be destroyed by intense heat. So if you look here, I have a textual variant flag, right? I have a bookmark here that says textual variant, right? And I also have a note. And you can see here, this is the same thing that I was showing earlier. So it's a little redundant, but this is again, if you subscribe to Cross Bible for $5 a month, you can take your own notes here and have them embedded in the verse, so that when you're reading the Bible, if you forget that, oh yeah, I took a note about this textual variant, right? I have it here. This is now just sort of part of my Bible reading experience. It's a customized feature, right? I have this note here, and I can go in and I can edit the note. And I have this rich text editor, and I can embed links, and I can do all this cool stuff if you're subscribed to Cross Bible. So this is going to get a massive overhaul pretty soon. We're going to have not only these bookmarks that you can, so I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want a bookmark for an inspiration verse. These are my categories, right? I got like inspiration, textual variant, theological, word study, versification. You can customize your bookmark categories here. So these are all of the custom Bible study features that we're working on. and that's the one that I just used to flag that textual variant. So going back to the wait a minute, where's okay, sorry. Going back to the slideshow. Okay, let's go back to the slideshow. I'm going to share this. We're going to get into more of these textual variants. 1 John 5:6. So here, let's make sure it's still okay. You guys can see. Boom. Let's put me down here. Here we have, this is the one who came by water and blood, the Spirit and the Spirit and of the Holy Jesus Christ. So utos estin o elthon diidatos ke ematos in the blood, ke pneumatos in the Spirit, agiu, the Holy Spirit. Pneumatos versus pneumatos agiu. Agiu is of holiness, right? It's implied. Isus Christos. Uketoidati monon, right? Not with the water only, al entoidati, but with the water or in the water, ke entoemati, and with the blood or in the blood, ke to pneuma estinto martirun, it is the Spirit who testifies, odito pneuma esti I alicia, because the Spirit is the truth, right? The ECM adopts the well-attested the idatos ke ematos by water and blood. Bart Ehrman has pointed out, and this is a little dig, has pointed out that the idatos ke ematos, and then ke PNS, right? Ke pneumatos, by water and blood and Spirit is actually the earliest and most widespread reading, according to Orthodox Corruption of Scripture, page 70, misattributing the reading to Origen. So apparently, I haven't double checked this in a while, but if you go to Orthodox Corruption of Scripture, page 70, apparently Bart Ehrman attributes that to Origen. Peter Gurry is suggesting that that's not true. So they're saying that the ECM adopts the reading and blood and Spirit, through water and blood, by water and blood. That's what they adopt in 1 John 5:6. And I won't pull up Cross Bible because it's burdensome to jump across it. So then in Acts 1:26 we have the ECM, and again this is the new version of the critical text being printed in the Editio Critica Maior through the the application of the coherence-based genealogical method that will eventually update the text slightly update the text of the, I guess it just depends on what you mean by slightly, right? It's a numbers game. It will update the text of the Nestle Aland, the critical text in the UBS, 6, Nestle Aland 29. It will cascade through all of those English translations so that the new versions of the NASB, the NRSV, the NIV, all these Bibles that will be on Cross Bible, they all need to be updated, and licenses need to be renewed, money needs to be paid. It's an industry. Whereas if you're favoring the traditional text, that never changes, right? Is it a work in progress, or is it the final form? Ke edokan klirus, right? And they drew lots. Ke edokan klirus, aftis or afton. So these are the textual variants. So is it aftis or autois, right, for them, or is it afton, auton, of them? Ke episan o kliros, and the lot fell epimathian, right? Epimathian to Matthias. Ke singate psifisti. That one's a mouthful. Singate psifisti. Psifizo means to add on to, or to vote. Psifizo is to vote now. Metaton endeka apostolon. So he was added to the 11 apostles after they cast the vote. So this seems to mean that the 11 gave lots to or for the two candidates as per the NA28, the UBS 5, the SBL text, the Tyndale House Greek New Testament, which we haven't talked about, which is another form of the critical text. ECM now follows the reading translated by the King James Version, the Byzantine reading, and found in most later Greek witnesses, which says instead that they gave their lots edokan klirus afton, and the lot fell to Matthias. So if the subject is still relevant here, then perhaps the word lots, klerus, in the accusative plural, could be understood as portions. And in the portion of the apostolic ministry that Judas forfeited, and that was now being offered to Joseph or Matthias, right? So they seem to have this rationale for why it is edokan klerus afton, their lots. They drew their lots as opposed to edokan klerus aftis for them, right? So this is they're reverting to the King James, even though this was updated. We thought we closed this door and now we're opening it again. In Acts 28, in Acts 20:28, in the NASB, prosechite aftis, be on your guard for yourself, que pandi topimnio, and for the flock, enoimas to pneuma to agion, among which the Holy Spirit, etheto episcopus, has made you overseers, pimenin tin ecclesian to Kyriou, to shepherd the church of the Lord. And then Isu could be in there, or it could be the church of the Lord, or the church of Jesus, or the church of Jesus, of the Lord Jesus and God, ke theou, right? Tu theou is the stand, is the baseline. And the question is, what you have in brackets here, does it include the Lord and Jesus, or just God, right? And then is it the Lord Jesus God, or is it the Lord Jesus and God? We got all these different, we have different readings in different brackets, right? Different textual variants. So in the NA28, the UBS 5, and the SBL, the Greek New Testament, they have tin ecclesian tu theou. So in the Church of God, that's the standard reading right now in the critical text. The Tyndale House Greek New Testament adopts the reading tin ecclesian tu Kyriou, right? The Church of the Lord. And the Robinson Pierpont's reconstruction of the Byzantine text has tin ecclesian tu Kyriou ke theou, so of the Lord and God, the Church of the Lord and God. The genealogical coherence and transcriptional evidence slightly favors the Lord here. So they think that it's just I ecclesia tu Kyriou, right? The Church of the Lord. That would be included alongside God, the Lord God. So presumably they don't have the Lord and God. So we'll see we could survey what the ECM of Acts 20:28 actually has. But they're saying that pre-genealogical coherence weighs into their decision to favor that reading. And here we have the mother lode. Here we have like one of the most noteworthy textual changes that we're going to have to get into a little bit before we wrap up. So, ke ipenmi, and he said to me, and this is the NASB reading has, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give water to one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. Now, the question here, it boils down really to grammar. The author of the book of Revelation probably wasn't a native Greek speaker, and we have some interesting sort of developments in Hellenistic Greek that are happening around this time, and in the Koine, the common dialect. So if you have a high dot here, this sort of semicolon, a Greek semicolon. So he said to me, after that, what did he say to me? He said, in the current critical text, yegonan, period, boom, it is done. Yegonan, right? Yegonan. Yegonan is from the verb yinome, and it means like it happened, like it is complete. It is the perfect. It is the Greek perfect, the perfect aspect. So with that period, now the original manuscripts didn't have periods, right? They didn't have any punctuation, so we don't really know for a fact that there was punctuation there. But if there's the letter N, the letter ni, nu, right, at the end of yegonan, then in the modern edition, you would punctuate it with a period. You would say, it is done, period, right? But if there's no N there, and we're going to see like there are manuscripts that don't have the N, if the textual critic decides, you know what, that N, I think that N came in later because somebody wanted the text of Revelation 21:6 to say it is done. They like that. They liked him saying, it is done, right? I am the Alpha and the Omega. That's God speaking, right? Well, if you take that N out, and you turn it into yegona, all of a sudden, the text now says, I have become. Yegona means like I have become, not yegonan, period, done, it is done. It, they are done, basically, it's plural. Yegona implies, because we don't have punctuation in the earliest manuscript, it implies that there is a continuation of this sentence. Yegona ego, so I have become to alpha ke to omega, the alpha and the omega. I have become the alpha and the omega. Seems like that's the more difficult reading, right? Like that's one that's like, if you're weighing, you got all these manuscripts that say, I have become the alpha and the omega. And then you have these other manuscripts competing for what has been traditionally read as, it is done, yegonan, period, ego to alpha ke to omega, I am the alpha and the omega, right? So it's a question of, is God announcing that he is the alpha and the omega, or is he saying that he became, he has become the alpha and the omega as of this point in time? It's easier to understand why a scribe would favor yegonan with the n and punctuate it, right? Like punctuate that sentence with the n, and what we now have a period. It's harder to imagine why you would have changed that, why you would drop the n and make it yegona ego to alpha ke to omega. I have become the alpha and the omega. That is a really critical issue. Okay. Now in classical Greek, the standard third person plural, reading a little note here. The standard third person plural active ending is often asin, right? So you would say yegonasin, which we find in some manuscripts. And let's look at that. If we look at what were we looking at? Revelation. Hold on. Revelation. And I think, and we're gonna look at this in the ECM too. And we're gonna wrap up hopefully before we hit the hour mark, 3-hour mark. Sorry. I got 9 people still left. Is anybody following me? Chime in on the chat if you're still listening 3 hours in. Thank you so much to everybody who's still listening for 3 hours about the CBGM. It is a dense topic, and I hope we can talk about it more in more condensed streams where we can go into more examples and actually dig into the ECM. So sorry, let me go back to my slideshow and make sure I get to the right. Yeah, 21. That's it. 21.6. Sorry, I lost my place. So 21.6. We have let's pin the NASB. And we got the NASB here. Let's put up the SBL Greek New Testament. Hold on 1 second. SBL. Okay. So here you can see what we have. Then he said to me, it is done, period. Right? So that's what we were looking at before. Keipenmi yegonan, period. Right? And you have brackets, right? And we're gonna have the textual apparatus available soon. Yegonan, period. Ego to alpha ke to omega. I am the alpha and the omega, right? And you can see that this is the traditional reading. If you look, let's look at the King James. What does the King James say? King James says, and he said unto me, it is done, period. I am the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, right? If you look at the Textus Receptus here, right? Let's look at Stephanus. Here we have keipemi, right? But this is a little different. They're saying, and tell me, right? Instead of ipenmi. Yegone. Well, okay. So here we have yegone versus yegonan. Yegonan is plural. So it's sort of like they are done in the plural, as opposed to yegone, it is done. But again, it's a period. Ego imi keto to alpha keto omega, right? I am the alpha and the omega. So it's the same, basically, for all of history, of the history of the text, this is not changed. This is not, okay. Good night, Ali. And, okay. Adonis acknowledged he is here. Imedo, thank you for bearing with me. We can actually, let me see if I can add here to the screen before we say goodbye. I will share Well, first of all, let's look at the Center of New Testament Restoration, just because it's an awesome resource and I want to make sure you guys have it. If we look up this verse on the Center of New Testament Restoration website, and go to Revelation 21, and I wish I had this level of granularity on Cross Bible. Maybe eventually we will. But here you can also see in verse 6, chapter 21 of Revelation, you could see all of these different varieties, right? So you have like in these manuscripts, ke legi mi or ke ipen mi yegona. So here you can see where yegona is coming from. It's coming from here. It's coming from Robinson Pure Part. Yegona, right? The alpha, and here it's I have become the alpha and the omega, right? So these can also sort of be connected. And then if you look in the ECM, let me see. So I close this. Hold on a second. Oh, I lost it. If you look at the ECM, boom. All right. So you can see here that the text here says Yegonan, and here is where the ECM is citing its witnesses for Yegonan versus Yegonasi versus Yegonasin egoimi, right? Yegona ego versus Yegona without ego. Here are the witnesses that it's citing for Yegona ego. Here are the witnesses it's citing without ego. And here I can't open the stemmata for this verse. So I can't really dig into what, how they're tracing the genealogy here in their coherence. But what we can look at is the ECM text of Mark, just as an example, right? So I'm looking here at Mark 14:51, and this is kind of an inside joke for some people of the different readings that you get in Mark 14:51 with the infamous Neaniskos, the young man who flees, right? Και νεανίσκος της συνηκολούθια αυτό, περιβεβλημένος συνδόνα επιγυμνού και κρατούσιν αυτόν. So there was a young man following him, Jesus, wrapped in a garment around his naked body, and they arrested him, right? Now, here you have all of these textual variants, right? And you have the textual variants that say some young man, which is the A variant that we have in the body of the text. We have neaniskos thetis, so and some young man, let's insert the. We have ke istis neaniskos, which has a star next to it, a diamond next to it, which is just like and one and some individual young man. But then you have like a bunch of other weird ones. You have at the end here, ke kratusin afton, you have the A reading ke kratusin afton and the witnesses that back it up. You have ke kratusin afton ineaniski. So there were like young men arresting the young man. That one's kind of funky. Que kratisan des aftoni neaniski and arresting him, the young men. So you have several readings where you have like multiple young men arresting the young man. Now, what you can do here, if you're in, and I have a link to this, the Institute of New Testament Research, right? The CBGM online. You can actually open this up, and you can see. Hold on, I got to close this tab. It opens in a separate tab. Let me share this new tab that it opens. Doesn't really let you follow me. This is the tab that it opens. And this is going to show you, this is their computer system, right? This is going to show you that the A reading is backed up by these witnesses. The B reading is backed up by these witnesses. And it shows you the local stemma. So this is what we were looking at in the slideshow, right? The local stemma for the A reading, right? So if ke kratusin afton is the A reading, we have the A reading represented here, okay? The A reading is giving rise to secondary readings B and G, right? So the B reading here, and again, look, this is a resource that, like, I'm sorry if you don't know Greek, this isn't for you, right? This is an advanced resource. This is something that is kind of in a black box. It's a little not accessible. It's not like nobody's democratized this quite yet. And this is the kind of thing that we're trying to do across Bible, is get resources like this to be more accessible. So I apologize in advance. This is all going to be Greek to a lot of people. I'm going to try to explain it, right? So the A reading here is giving rise to the B reading and the G reading. So ke kratusin avton, and they arrested him, and they were arresting him, right? Ke kratusin avton neaniski. So they're saying that, look, there's a ton of witnesses of manuscripts, that's what these numbers are, that attest to this reading, and the young men were arresting him, the young man, right? Like, we don't think that's original. No Bible is going to print that, but it's super prevalent. There are more witnesses to that variant than there are to the initial reading, but they've reconstructed the stemmata through the computer system to say that, and they were arresting him as the A variant, that gives rise to this B variant, that then gives rise to the C, D, E, and F variant, right? And so ke kratisan des avton ineaniski, which is the same thing here. It's like basically the young men, and having, and arresting him, the young man. Like, it's a participle. Ke neaniski kratusin avton, and the young men were arresting him. This is this D variant that also is arising from the B variant. The E variant, ida nianiski kratusin avton, and the young men were arresting him. It's the same. It's basically paraphrasing the same thing. So we can assume, like, that, just infer that because these appear to be derivational from B, that these are secondary. C, D, E, and F are genealogically descended from B. B is genealogically descended from A, and G is genealogically descended from A. So A gives us our primary reading. This is how the local stemmata work, right? Whereas the coherence at variance passage, here you're getting, rather than just like reading A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, you're getting the coherence between these manuscripts, right? And how the manuscripts themselves, or at least the witnesses to these readings themselves, are genealogically related. So what they, and then this is the coherence and attestation. So to sort of wrap this up, right? This is the general textual flow that you get. And I don't know. Okay, yeah. So basically they're taking, and this is similar, like look, the timeline of the Bible is much more readable than this, right? But this is the same concept, that you have manuscripts that, at least in this particular, so the crux of the coherence-based genealogical method, the CBGM, the reason why this is valuable, and to kind of wrap this up, is that you have the ability to hone in, to sort of zoom in on textual variants in association with the manuscripts that they come from. So these numbers are the numbers for the manuscripts, right? These are manuscript identifiers. But we're building a genealogy for a specific reading in a manuscript, not necessarily for the manuscripts themselves, because any individual one of these manuscripts could be copying from multiple sources that we don't have visibility into, right? We can detect the sources through, looking at the individual variants, but the idea that you can construct a family tree of manuscripts and rely on that for the process of textual criticism is what is being overthrown by the CBGM. The CBGM is instead building its genealogies of individual readings of textual variants as attested by witnesses, and the witnesses are those places of divergence within the manuscripts. And then you're able to construct these stemmata, so you can see that, okay, this manuscript descended from this manuscript, descended from this manuscript, and so on. And you can trace your way up the chain until you get to the A reading that they chose for the text, and you can quantify it. You can quantify the degree to which they are that they are crossing, that they have pre-genealogical coherence. So basically, if the two manuscripts have pre-genealogical coherence, you can say that, okay, you can trace the ancestry up through the chain, and you can say that these two manuscripts generally tend to agree 80% or 90% of the time. They have pre-genealogical coherence. And you can just siphon through a lot more data of the Gospel of Mark to use these computer-based tools to guide the human textual critic, or maybe, I don't know, maybe eventually AI, to arrive at the most likely hypothetical reconstruction of a given part of the text, and just rinse and repeat that process over and over again until you've hammered out a new, cobbled together an updated New Testament, or just corroborated the version you already have. In a lot of places, you go through this whole process. I mean, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of data that's going into this. This isn't just like, oh, okay, these are just a bunch of there's some nefarious purpose here. They're trying to reconstruct the text. So this should not just be dismissed, right? This is very helpful stuff. And you can go through, you can do this on your own. Like I said, there's a link in the description to the, let's see what there's a link in the description to the Institute for New Testament Textual Research, the INTF website. That's what I was just showing. You can browse that platform on your own. It helps if you know Greek, and sign up for, so let me just do, to wrap this up, I will do one final plug. So make sure you go to Cross Bible, and hold on a second. Let me just get out of the timeline. If you go to the homepage, if you scroll down to Biblingo, there's a affiliate link here. You can go and learn Greek and Hebrew on Biblingo and use the promo code CrossBible10. I would love it, actually. If somebody would do that, I can prove to Biblingo that I'm actually driving traffic to their site. So sign up for Biblingo with the code CrossBible10 and start learning either Greek or Hebrew or both. It's a great resource, and I'm very proud to be a partner with them. Make sure you sign up for free, register for free. Once you're registered, you can sign in and go to the billing page. If you want to subscribe for $5 a month, you can. Oh, was I even showing that? I don't know. Yeah. So you can start taking notes in your Bible, bookmarking your Bible. Soon you're going to be able to highlight and do other cool things. So I would encourage everybody to get on the Discord. Let me drop a new link to the Discord for anybody who's not on it yet. And get on the Discord. Use Cross Bible. Use the paid features if you can afford it. We appreciate the support. Here's Discord. Drop it in the chat for the 10 people who are left. And start participating and contributing to the Cross Bible community. We're putting together a great community of people who are dedicated to the study of the Bible, who are taking notes in their Bible, marking up their Bible. If you're not into the Bible software, go support us on Patreon. Watch our videos. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I'm really close to 2,000. I'm hoping I can celebrate 2,000 subscribers next week. We really, really need, people to, even if you've seen our videos already, just go, for the 10 people who are left, do me a favor, please go, watch my last video, either in Greek or I'll just drop the Greek version. The very last video that I released is the Greek interview that I did with Father Evangelos Markadonis. Okay. So, please watch our videos, subscribe, support us on Patreon, do what you can. If you can't support us financially, just watching the videos, just liking this video, making sure you're subscribed, and watching the videos that we have on YouTube is a big boost, because we're really, really close to getting monetized. And at that point, you'll be able to give super chats and other way, and we'll be able to start earning a little bit of money from the YouTube content. I got something coming down the pipeline that you're going to really like. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell for the next time we drop a video. And hopefully next weekend we'll do another live stream on Saturday. So thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you for the 9 people who are still here. And let's keep learning together. So thank you very much. And I hope this was helpful and informative. Have a good rest of your day.